So the first question I wanted to ask you is how did you get into medicine? At what age did you kind of have an interest in getting into helping people?
Man, Noah. Okay to call you Noah?
Yeah.
All right, Noah, that's a deep question, man. When did I first get into medicine? Um, well, we got to take it back, man. We got to take it back. So first of all, I'm a first generation Mexican American, Chicano. Very proud of my roots, and my parents are from the state of Jalisco. So we're from a small town. Honestly, it's a farm town. To be honest with you, it's close. It's about an hour and a half from Guadalajara, so that's a big city. But we're a city. We're from a small town. People, hardworking people. And what our parents did is, I was born close to Oakland, so I was born in San Leandro, which is about 10, 15 minutes from Oakland. And what our parents would do every summer is they would take us to Mexico, and I think that was a way for us to get in touch with our culture. So, my mom, my dad, they're working factories. In fact, my mom was a breadwinner. She worked in a factory because my dad had an accident where he almost had his leg amputated, basically
What?
in a forklift accident. And so, they had to work. They managed to buy a house in Union City, which is the East Bay. We grew up in a little in a Chicano barrio. Decoto has a rich Mexican American history. And my mom worked at a local factory um, there in Decoto, and what they would do is they would send us to Mexico in the summers with my grandma. So it was me with my abuelita, my little sister, and we would just go to Mexico, man. That's months, bro. I mean, we were there like 2 months, July, August. That's where I had my exposure to my culture. And one of the unique things, Noah, is we were very, very, very Catholic. I mean, hardcore Catholic,
Yeah.
and that part of Mexico is like that. Michoacan, Zacatecas, Jalisco, and one of the things was my grandmother's sister was a nun, rest in peace, and nuns live in convents, and you know how it is in Mexico. A lot of hospitals are Catholic. Actually,
Hmm.
most of the hospitals are Catholic, and so as a way for my grandma to spend time with her sister, we would go to the convent, and this is in the city of Tepatitlan. So we're about close to Guadalajara, and so I was a little kid in this hospital that was a convent, which is crazy because it's like this crazy experience where I'm living, I'm a little kid living with nuns, bro, in the summer, and it's nuts because it's a hospital. So just imagine this, brick hospital. I mean, the hospital is like old, brick building, crazy. And these old structures in Mexico probably predated the revolutions from Mexico.
Dang.
And bro, it was old school. They had this copper bell with a or rope, and they would that's how they would call for breakfast, lunch, dinner. And that's I was a little kid. I was environment. It was a really, really rich environment. It's like if you were transported to like the 1600s,
Hmm.
and you're just like living with monks. It's like going through a portal back in time. And what the good thing was about this experience, Noah, is that it was a hospital and the medicine was right there. So to give you an example, I'm walking around the hospital, and it let's say a trauma, like there was a car accident in the city. That person would just drive. You know how it is to just drive to the hospital. So I would see like people coming in bloodied up, almost dying, and you're just a little kid. I'm walking around the hospital. It's a small little convent hospital, and
Hmm.
that was my exposure to medicine. It was real. It wasn't like sanitized through these barriers. It was there. It was in your face. And what's crazy is I never saw an exchange of money for health like the way it is here. It was just like
Hmm.
treat you, and this is the way it is. And so I met a lot of doctors there when I was a little kid, and became very good friends with them. They're older people, and I'm like, oh, really cool what you do. I was just very, very inspired, and it was just this crazy, unique mix of living with nuns and being exposed to medicine, and then you know people were having babies, and there's a little maternity ward, and I'm just like, dude, I'm a little kid, and I'm just
Yeah.
walking around, look at the newborn babies. I mean, talk about the richness of being exposed to medicine. And honestly, I think in my subconscious, that's what it was. I think I was always interested in medicine, and it was in my DNA because of of my experience in Mexico,
Mm.
and I think that really drove me. I always like science. I always like when I was a little kid. I love like studying stars and comets and all that. Like I noticed that I love more science stuff,
Mhm.
but I think it was that exposure from. And I would say if I were to pinpoint to one thing that led me to science to medicine, it's my experience in Mexico as a little kid.
Mhm. That's crazy too, because I feel like that's what I think summers are good for. I don't think a lot of
Hmm.
people, especially from like neighborhoods that we grew up in, they don't get an opportunity to, right? They're kind of trapped, whether it's financial reasons or whatever, you know.
Hmm.
But I think getting to experience other cultures, you know, traveling, right? I think that's the whole point. And getting to see a little different part, even if it's your own family, you may not think as much, but like that kind of helps shape you as a person. And you know, it's good to go out and explore and try new things, even at an early age.
Well, our culture is so rich,
Hmm.
Noah. Like it's a disservice what the educational system does in this country to our culture. They don't teach us anything, man.
Hmm.
So, like my education, my culture comes from my home because my parents, my dad has sixth grade education.
Dang.
Sixth grade education. He worked, man. My mom, Mexico, bro. They came in the
Yeah.
70s. My dad came as a farm worker, straight up. Northern California, Oregon, farm worker, 60s.
Hmm.
He rubbed shoulders with Chavez, man. He met Chavez. I mean,
Dang.
bro, this old school, man. I'm telling you, the history is rich, and this is before Chavez was Cesar Chavez.
Yeah.
He's rubbing shoulders with them. My dad's working with like community Chicanos, and in Dakota, and he's old school, man. I mean, he was working there since the '60s, and he remembers Chavez going to Fremont and visiting the farm workers, like in Fremont, California. I'm sure you heard of the city. It's where they
Yeah.
make the Tesla cars now.
Oh, dang. Okay.
And you know what's at Silicon Valley? That's where Chavez was, man. That's the blood of that. That's the history of that place.
Hmm.
The history of Silicon Valley is our people work hands. And my dad, was in the middle of all that. And so, they got married and settled in Dakota in the 70s. And I was born into that, man. But that I got from my culture was at home. Like I was taught about like my parents were very my dad especially, like, he was very enlightened, and he would, even though he had education, he would teach us about art poets,
Hmm.
our contributions to art, to music, what Mexico was going through in the late 60s with the uprising and the silencing and the killings of students in 1968. That was a big movement. That was before the Mexico Olympics.
Hmm.
They killed a bunch of students because students were demanding justice, and basically just they were demanding to have a voice. And my dad was, he would come to the U.S. and go back. So he was kind of like a bracero, which I'm sure
Hmm.
you heard of the
Yeah.
bracero programs. He was doing a lot of that, and he remembers all that, man. My mom was a nursing student in Guadalajara, and in '68, she remembers the federal government coming in, like the army, AK-47s, man, or whatever
Wow.
guns they used back then. To everyone get on the floor, and they were trying to like they were kidnapping like what they perceived as communists, man. It was a worldwide. It wasn't just in Mexico. It was a worldwide suppression of leftist ideals, and
Yeah.
in Latin America and stuff. And my parents were in the thick of that, and they got married and eventually came up here in the '70s. But when I think about my inspiration for like getting that energy, that came from home.
Hmm.
Like I always felt like the public school system really didn't do service to my like. It just felt empty. Like
Yeah.
just like, okay, I'm here in school. Like, okay.
Yeah.
It's not home. Home is where you learn. And I think you're right. We're lucky to have parents that care, because I had a lot of friends whose parents were incarcerated or parents were dead,
Hmm.
and they didn't have that opportunity that I had because I had two parents, two,
Hmm.
two, two Mexican parents that were very enlightened and very hard.
Yeah. And you take that for granted, right? I think a lot of times
Mm-hmm,
when you're living and you grow up with that, and then
mm-hmm,
you see your friends, you see them and you may think, they have more potential than you, or you just see them kind of compete in school or compete in sports and they're competing at high levels. And then sometimes, you don't know what goes on at home though, and they kind of fall off the rails, or they do something that you never thought they would, or they get in legal trouble, or they're just kind of victims to their society and what's around them, and older brothers or older cousins, or, family stuff. that's outside of their control, and they're just kind of born into situations. But it's crazy. My grandfather was in the Bracero program too. I want to say he did that in the mid '50s starting,
Mm-hmm.
and so he's a little older generation. And then he had my mom and entire tios and tias over here starting like late '60s when he settled down. But same thing. Like I guess always hearing stories of him, and he lost his father at a young age. I really don't know the entire story, but he had to start coming here around 13, 14 years old as part of that program. And so he was sent over at a young age, and I think anytime like I was kind of faced with adversity just through schooling at a young age, my mom especially, she'd always kind of bring up that example, like, hey, like think about it, like your grandfather at this age, like he was forced to work in an entire different country, had to leave home. And she didn't do it to rub it in or like say, oh, like boo-hoo for you. But I think she just did it because like, he made a bunch of sacrifices and my parents did too. But I think, learning about my grandfather's sacrifices definitely inspired me. He's like, well, who am I to like quit after this hard test or this hard class or this hard whatever? It always kind of kept me moving forward because like, man, this dude really went through a lot and he loves us and he's
Mm-hmm.
still here today. And,
Mm-hmm.
God bless his soul and everything. But,
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy. Like, how can you disappoint that man? And,
Mm-hmm.
just learning about stories like that. I wish I knew more about my family and their
Mm-hmm.
history, but it seems like to kind of cut off right there. My grandparents, there's not much
Mm-hmm.
shared. And because of, we're growing up here in the States, the curriculum, especially here in California, it's
Mm-hmm.
very vanilla. It's very cut and
Mm-hmm.
dry. And they
Mm-hmm.
don't teach you a whole lot that keeps you interested. I don't
Mm-hmm.
now working with kids, school always came easy to me, but now I work with kids and I can see why some things aren't appealing to them because it is like a boring part of history. If they got to learn more
Mm-hmm.
about each individual's culture, I know that would require a little bit more effort on the teacher's part. But if you could do some of more interactive stuff and not so be cut and paste with the same boring stuff again over and over, I think these kids would like school a little bit more for sure.
My brother's a teacher, and he teaches in San Jose,
Hmm.
and he teaches middle school. So shout out to Leo Padilla, man. He'd be a great person for you to interview and about this, man. And the reality is that you have to see yourself in the people that you're helping,
Hmm.
And so this happens in medicine. It's called cultural concordance. That if you have a doctor who's of your similar background, you're probably going to have better outcomes. It's
Right.
not a secret, right? It's not controversial, but it's profound. So if you, for example, like anesthesia, and a lot of the work that I do is like, and I know I'm jumping in the medicine part here, but I think it's a good example. Like if you provide Spanish education for patients, they're more likely to pursue a certain medical because they identify with you, man. And absolutely, I mean, I think it's profound, in education and business, and it transcends any type of field. But you said some very interesting things. You talked about Mexico and learning about your, the sacrifices of your family and your grandpa and your grandfather. Like that's what motivated me too, is thinking about the sacrifices of my family and stuff. And that's important because you're taught that from when you're little. Don't take this for granted.
Mhm.
The sacrifice, right? I mean, we're first generation, and so you think how fresh it is in our mind that this sacrifice happened, like this sacrifice of our parents coming to a new country. And I
Mhm.
can't imagine picking up and going to China, if you will, as an example, and new language and this and that. Like, that's crazy. That's abstract in my mind.
Yeah.
But they did that. And they picked up and went to a new country, even though this country was originally ours,
Yeah.
right? Which is another important part of history that we were taught to have pride, like to really understand who we are in terms of like Mexican American California. The
Mhm.
name itself, California, Arizona, these are all Spanish names.
Mhm.
And no, you're right, man. It's the no, you're touching a lot of deep things, man. Family sacrifice, the inspiration of our ancestors, and where we come from. Like our people are survivors, and I think what we have something is that our families are really close from in proximity to where we're from. So I think you said Michoacan or Zacatecas, Michoacan.
Michoacan, yeah.
All right, Michoacan and Jalisco were right next to each other, and then Guanajuato an hour away from where we're from. And that part of Mexico, man, Mexico is known for having two revolutions,
Mhm.
in early 1800s, early 1900s, but we had a third revolution, which is the That was when the federal government, the Catholic Church is basically going at it.
Yeah.
And you think about that, man. That's it. In that amount of time, through revolutions, that causes a lot of trauma, and a lot of it shapes you culturally.
Hmm.
This country is whatever, we had the American Revolution and the Civil War, but not nearly as much violence that our people was exposed to. So
Hmm.
we already are definition different. We have a different outlook, and so I think that's probably what fuels our hunger. So I remember going to Mexico, and and being exposed to the what happened in the late 1920s, which is the Cristero Revolution. So like they would tell us stories of our grandpa, like, dude, the federal government will come in, they'll tell us stories like federal come in, and they would just straight up hang Catholics, like straight up just
Ooh,
hang people, and
dang.
just as a warning, like, there you go. This is when our great grandfathers were kids. And I mean, that's crazy, man. Now that they made movies about it, I forgot the name of the movie. Andy Garcia's in the movie, all this stuff. But imagine that's our grandparents living through that,
Hmm.
and um, Guanajuato's right in the thick of that. So one of the things that stands out when I was little is they would take us to this to the martyrs churches. So this, I'm sure you've heard of this Toribio.
Hmm.
So Padre Toribio, they would take us. That's right close to Jalos Totitlan, where we're from. Actually, the name of the town is Santana.
Oh yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
it's close to Jalos, and they would take us to visit his church. And this is our reality. This is our exposure to, right, the way that our grandparents taught us is they didn't hide from. They would show us. They had a little glass like vase. They had his clothes the clothes he was wearing when he was assassinated, and it's still stained with blood. This is in the late 1920s and stuff. But that's unique. If you think about it, like the Protestant Christian way is very different. It's very sterile. It's like you don't go into a Protestant church, like they don't have any of these visions of blood,
Right.
of suffering. But we were exposed to that even as little
Hmm.
kids. Like, no, 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 mira, mijo. Look, that's the blood right there. That's what your ancestors went through. That's
Yeah.
really, that shapes everything, your outlook on life. So you're a little kid, you're just, wow,
Yeah.
man, and you don't even know the impact it has. Like to this day, I'm still figuring this out.
Hmm.
I'm still, and I think I think it really does motivate me today as a physician. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that was the cool thing about I took a few history of Mexico classes in like college and stuff whenever I had to take an elective. I'm a big
Mm,
history fan and I got a
good.
chance to take a few different ones, but learning about like mestizo culture, right? Like in our
Mm,
present day Mexican
mm-hmm,
culture is a good mix of like the native, whether it's Aztecs or a few other
mm-hmm,
people, right? And different tribes, their practices and their traditions, but also, what the Spaniards brought with Catholicism. And
mm-hmm,
the biggest one is like the Lady of Guadalupe, right? That was
mm,
like a combination,
mm,
of like
mm.
it actually originated as like a native
Yep,
ceremonial thing, and then the
yep,
Catholics were like, okay, we'll just kind of adopt that and
yep.
twist it a little bit, and now it's celebrated, entirely, at least in Mexico, right? But I don't think other Catholics around the world celebrate it like the way we do. So I just think it's kind of interesting, like, and you can go further into it from food, cuisine, art,
Mm-hmm.
the wardrobes and stuff like that people wear. It's a beautiful blend, and there is that lot of like compared to other cultures and other religions, like there is a big like native presence in our
Bro,
culture.
it's so unique that the Vatican has even commented on this. I can't remember reading, the exact words from the articles, but it is unheard of, like parts of the world, to walk into a Catholic church and before the image of Christ, you see the image of the Virgin Mary. You go to any church in Latin America, what do you see first?
Guadalupe.
That's unique. Man. That's unique. That is a direct native influence. And it's profound, man. It's profound because it shapes our identity, man. I mean, there's a whole word for it, and I can't do it just because I'm not a historian, but Marianismo.
Hmm.
You remember? And so Marianismo is a whole study of the influence of La Virgen de Guadalupe. In our. I mean, that's profound, man. I mean, it's just you're talking about things that affects our psyche to a T, and
Hmm.
we're just beginning to understand this. But this, what I mean by like this won't teach us this, and this is our history, and it's a shame because how can you be public school student in California,
Hmm.
California, and not learn about the own history of California, the own influences, the that, like you said, like the Spanish history and the native history, and like how could you not like really dig down and dig deep into that? And I think that probably what turns off a lot of kids to the public school system, to be honest with you. I think
Yeah.
it really just what am I doing here?
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think the biggest thing too, the demographics of teachers, principals,
there you
counselors.
go.
I don't know what it was like over there in Union City, but I felt like predominantly all my teachers through high school were predominantly white. That I maybe had like a few Hispanic teachers, but even then, they taught like classes like Spanish or I think, yeah, it was like, or maybe like a science class. But I didn't. I could probably count them on one hand the amount of diversity, right, that were non-white teachers. And so I think, as a kid, you're just kind of like, well, okay, these teachers, they come in from other towns, right? They come in from like different parts of Orange County where I'm from like Lake Forest, Irvine, Laguna, little different areas. So they're not even like invested into our community. They're just kind of doing it from a job. And,
Mm,
and you can kind of tell, I remember my senior
mm,
English teacher, he was one of those, I felt like teachers that kind of put in minimal effort.
mhm,
Same with like
mhm,
my freshman English year teacher. And
mhm,
I remember those teachers just as much as the good teachers that I've had. The
mhm.
ones that just put very minimal effort and just kind of B plus or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's just kind of like, all right, well,
Yeah,
what's the point of even trying? What's the point of putting max effort and going above and beyond, right? When
you're
you have,
you're 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 touching on the deep. It's representation.
yeah.
It's concordance. Like I said in medicine, cultural concordance. Like this is a big problem in higher education.
Hmm.
And I mean, dude, I felt it when I was in school. It was the same thing. It was exact same experience as you.
Hmm.
Exact. And the problem is, Noah, the problem is that actually we're Mexicans. We're Mexican, right? We have our own culture, our own identity, and that's the majority. So in our barrio in Decoto, like we're all Latinos, man. Most of we're Mexican Americans. My wife grew up in LA. High school's 99% Latino. I'm just straight
Hmm.
up Southgate, California. You
Yeah.
probably heard of
Oh yeah.
Southgate.
I've heard. Yeah. No
It's all
Southgate.
it's all Mexicans, and I remember going to Southgate to visit. I'm like, dude, this is all Mexicans, man. Like deep Mexicans. You had like the los sombreros and the whole thing, but when you have a dominant culture like that and you have a lack of representation in education, it's not just the identity that's a lack of representation, but it's the ideas.
Mm,
It's the ideas. And so, like, what are, like I remember in the early 90s, our issues, I remember we're like, the, um, our issues were like, when Pete Wilson was, uh, basically, in a sort of because I was a fourth grader. I mean, you got to think, man. I was a fourth grader, but I was already exposed to like what some of these, frankly racist, like deport Mexicans. You know what I mean? I was a fourth grader, man. I'm digging back into memory here, but you
yeah.
remember that. I mean, think about that as a fourth grader. And so you really think like if I brought this stuff up as in fifth grade in a classroom, like trust me, man, the only way that would be a fruitful conversation is if you had a teacher that understood that.
Hmm.
Hey, you know what? This is what this community cares about. A good example today is like, the issues with ICE.
Right.
The issues with ICE. Like, you need to have a teacher that just understands the plight of these communities, and you just have a higher chance of likelihood of having identifies with it if they're culturally similar.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's the reality. I mean, it's just the truth, man. It's the truth. And yeah, like my brother, I think really tries to, practice that way because San Jose is a lot of Latinos.
Right.
And, he really tries to practice that way. But you're right, man. It's absolutely true.
Hmm.
Absolutely true.
Well, sticking with the theme of school, how are you as a student through grade school all the way up to high school?
Ooh, it's a loaded question, man. We gotta take that in bits and
Okay.
pieces. So the first thing is, like I mentioned a little earlier, I was just into science. Like I always knew, man. I was like just geeking out in science. And the problem with our neighborhood was, um, it's a low income neighborhood, and so you had a lot of the difficulties and a lot of the obstacles of a low income neighborhood, like overcrowded classrooms.
Yeah.
you know, quality of education probably wasn't there, and we got a lot of like kids gang banging and doing this other stuff, and it dilutes of your experience. And all of a sudden, you got to play the part, man, because you're gonna get picked on if you're different.
Right.
That's the reality, So you think I could be in a classroom like that and talk about, uh, so like I'm thinking back in the fourth, fifth grade, I was interested in like comets and asteroids,
Yeah.
and you think I'm gonna sit there and talk? No, no, it's not like these kids are going through stuff, man. I was lucky to have a stable home and stuff. But, I had friends whose parents were incarcerated. Kids started like doing drugs already. Probably the earliest I remember hearing was like sixth grade. Kids were smoking weed, doing
Yeah.
this. Your environment's changing, and these are good kids, and you see it. Their environment's changing, so you got to play the part. You want to fit in. You want to be part of the tribe, and that's what I did. I just started fitting in. Even though I was a really good kid, everything was good. Fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade. I remember things were solid, and then in high school, man, the things started just to get out of hand.
Mm.
High school was crazy. So high school, the problem was in our neighborhood is in Dakota historically there's a lot there's been a lot of problems with the history of the police department
Mm.
or and our communities, and there high profile cases, man. You can look up in the news like citizens killed, Mexican citizens killed,
Damn.
and I mean, this was crazy, man. This dates back to the 70s, and when you're born into that environment, you feel it, but you understand it. So an example is, things started to get really out of hand in high school, and I just felt like the teachers didn't really care. And by this time, I had a lot of friends that were just really getting into trouble, and I just stopped caring about school, fights, this and that. I mean, I was never in a gang per se,
Mm-hmm.
but the aura and everything that was spinning off the violence, man. Like, our neighbors selling drugs. It was like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, just by proxy, it's going to affect what you see, and how you react. And I just stopped going to school. It was like sophomore year, and it was like so client. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Just didn't feel safe. I don't want to go. I was at home. Just didn't want to go. My dad was, my dad's old school Mexican. He's like, ¿Qué andas haciendo? I mean, dude, but this is a sophomore year. I had 4 Fs or 4 Ds and 2 Fs. It was just
Dang.
I was just done. I was done with school, man. And my dad was like, no, we're gonna get together. We're gonna rally together. And it was crazy because how can I just get myself to that level of not caring? I think subconsciously I just didn't want to go to school because I knew things were bad. All these kids that grew up with good kids, but we were just all going down the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was like, all right, went to my counselor's office. And I'm in my counselor's office, like, all right, like I'm getting in fights, this and that. And I mean, frankly, like for me, I wasn't looking for violence. I felt like I just was, I was trying to hang out with my crew of friends, and there was just a lot of violence and stuff. And
Right.
my dad was like, all right, how are you going to protect my son? And they were just like, they didn't care, man. And so my dad was like, I remember him, on the ride home, he was just, dude, this is 3 blocks away from my house, 3 blocks away. And my dad was like, hijos de la, hijos de la. He knew his being ignored. That's crazy, right? Because he's three
Yeah.
blocks away. This is you. We pay taxes to the school system. My mom works hard, the factory to, this should be like, should have been like, what are, Padilla, we're going to do everything possible. None of that.
Right.
So my dad, this is the resourcefulness of the immigrant community. This is what immigrants do. My dad called up his friend in Fremont. So Fremont's, 20 miles away, or next city over, and he's like, his friend owned a home over there. It's a higher socioeconomic school system.
Mm.
And he's like, hey, can we use your address? And this is like a Mexican immigrant, Don Luis, man, rest in peace. He's an angel. And he's like, yeah, we're gonna do it. He's like, my dad's Polo, Don Polo, no se preocupe. Don't worry about it. It's the address. And I went to a new high school, and this is my junior year, man. But But the crazy thing is this: my dad was right. So the intuition of my dad was right. So I went to new high school. This is 2002 as a junior.
Hmm.
That year, when I was at this other high school, where I also enrolled in adult school to make up my credits, because I had to make up my credits, right? You just can't grow time without making up your credits.
Right.
And so my dad would wake up every day, bro. We would drive 20, minutes or whatever to this high school just to avoid all the craziness of my environment when my high school was 3 blocks away.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. That year, when I'm over there, police raid. The police, bro. They set this up. The school said the police raid in my high school. I was supposed to be at 3 blocks away from my house.
Hmm.
They go in the classroom, bro. They just pick up kids that look Latino, pick up kids that look Filipino. They
No.
just, bro, they start raiding their stuff. They separate these kids. All crazy, right? You're talking about an insane. I'm not a lawyer, but an insane amount of civil rights violations.
Yeah.
The ACLU goes in, bro, and the school settles. 60 kids, bro. 60 kids. So think about this. While I was gone over there, I could have been one of those 60 kids.
Hmm.
And that speaks to the environment. So my dad was right. My dad rolled the dice on his son, and he was right. I mean, this. When the ACLU is involved, it's no small deal.
Right. Hell yeah.
It's the American Civil Liberty Union, man. Like that is a big deal. And they won. And they won for a reason, because it was wrong.
Hmm.
It's a direct violation. And so now all of a sudden it makes sense. The environment, that tension that I remember feeling, it's validated, bro.
Hmm.
History has validated my dad's decision. Because back then it would have been like, oh, you're someone else's address, you're bad. You know what's worse? Getting picked up by a cop and being racial,
Yeah.
Being profiled racially. That's worse.
Yeah.
That's worse. And history absolved my dad, man. I mean, it was
Hmm.
beautiful because we know it, and he made the right choice. And that's what we do as immigrants, So
Yeah.
so I'm over here at this other city, finishing up my credits and going to high school, and still acting a fool, but I'm not getting in. I'm not failing at every class,
Yeah. Okay.
and I'm still going to Mexico every summer. I'm still going to Mexico.
Hmm.
So I had that to follow. It's my culture.
Yeah. But isn't that a shame going back to the whole school thing? Because I see the same problem here too. Like a new school opens up in like the city of Santa Ana, and all of a sudden like they're the school that has like a different curriculum, right? They have a
Mm-hmm.
fundamental. That's like the label that they throw onto it, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's like they're supposedly they have better teachers, they have a better curriculum, like they have to do stuff outside of what the state recommends them, and so like every parent that cares, they want to get their kids to there. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like, all right, well, what does that mean for the other schools? Does that mean you're just like
Mm-hmm.
gonna suck those resources dry, and then all the kids who can't get into that school, or just parents don't care, like they're forced to settle for like such a
Mm-hmm.
such a shitty education? And
Mm-hmm.
city of Santa Ana, there's a high school, Century High School. Yeah, I used to read the newspaper a lot as a kid. And in like 2011, they had like the highest teen pregnancy dropout rate in the state of
Mm-hmm.
California. And
Mm-hmm.
you just like heard
Mm-hmm.
different stories of like Saddleback High School my parents went to. It has
Mm-hmm.
gone under the gutter, and all these
Mm-hmm.
different high schools in the area, because as soon as they open one up, it's like, okay, let's all flock there, and the
Mm-hmm.
city puts all their resources there, and now
Mm-hmm.
all the other ones suffer. And it's crazy to see that, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy that we amount to that.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate because there's such an inequality
Hmm.
in funding. And I picked this up. My older brother really exposed me to a lot of these topics. Um, and it's just very unfortunate, man. Like because it's the Bay Area's. I mean, dude, it's Google, Apple's there. I mean, come on, man. It's like wealth that you can't even imagine. But where's that wealth going? That wealth going?
Right.
It's concentrated. It's concentrated in a few school districts, in a few schools. But you have all these kids in Hayward, in Dakota, like suffering
Hmm.
for what? And the sad thing is, Noah, that I think we just our parents, like, they knew, they felt it, but just what are they gonna do?
Hmm.
We didn't know lawyers growing up. We didn't know doctors growing up. They just knew the instinct, which the instinct was to protect their family and to work hard.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. And that provided a good backbone. But even then, it's not enough because the system is going to, we have to maneuver these obstacles, man. So I would say, looking back, it was my culture, my parents' determination, the resourcefulness that I talked about, going to new school. But it was also going to Mexico because that summer where I dropped out, went to this new high school, I
Mm-hmm.
met a girl, and that
Hey.
girl's my wife, bro.
Oh wow.
Straight up, man. Yeah, we went to Halos, and she's from Southgate, so we were, we're out there in Mexico, just 14-year-old girl, 16, little knucklehead, man. Just, acting a fool and just being a kid. I wasn't a bad kid. None of us were bad. How bad can you be when you're 14, 15? You're not bad,
Right.
man. You're not bad. You're a reflection of your environment, and it's crazy because I met her and I'm like, damn. She's like, I'm going to Berkeley, so I'm going to UC. I'm like, damn. Okay, okay. And then here I am. I'm like, oh, I'm trying to make up my trying to make up my credit.
Yeah.
But it was a good example because we needed that, right? So we need good examples, good role models, and I was like, all right, you can do this. So it was baby steps, bro. It was baby steps. It was making up my credits at adult school, the adult school system. A big shout out to adult. I spoke to some of the representatives earlier today. I gave an interview for like the adult school system, and so like,
Oh nice.
so I'll let that interview, talk about that, shed light on that plight, but it was there for me. It serves a vulnerable, it serves a purpose, and I enrolled in adult school concurrently in my junior year while I was in high school, and credits, man, and then I came back to my original high school, a few blocks away, and here's the crazy part: came back, all my friends gone, bro. Everyone's dropped out.
Yeah.
I mean, the majority. And those who weren't were affected psychologically.
Yeah.
Like they just weren't there. They weren't up to par,
Mm-hmm.
And what was nuts was when I was at when I was at this new high school in Fremont. I met very influential people, and I want to give a shout out my friend James Marrero. So I should say the right way, James Marrero. He's a Puerto Rican, half black. The kid who I met in the 10th grade, and just mind you, I'm like literally fresh. Like, I'm almost dropped out, right? I
Yeah.
go to the new high school, and I meet this kid. He's smart, man. Smart, very sure of himself. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going, to Rutgers. I'm going to go to Rutgers University." I'm like,
Oh shit.
"Bro, I never heard of that."
Yeah.
I mean, it blew my mind, right? Because my friends are over here in Dakota. It's just we're products of our. We're not violent by nature. We're just products of our environment. We're trying to survive. And I'm like, yo, what is this? And then all of a sudden, I started to look inside of me, and I'm like, can I? And then he's just a crazy part, bro. And this is where, like, it's almost like God saying, I met his mom, and it's his mom, Dr. Santalina Marrero, bro. I didn't even know she was a doctor, bro, back then. And I met her. She takes me in her house. Just see what I see. I just see a Latina woman.
Yeah.
So I now I'm like, okay, it's a Latina woman, just like my mom or my tias. She looks at me, bro, and she just looks at me like one of her sons, and I'm like, bro, is that love? That love from the kid. And I'm like, and I think about this, Noah. She is basically she's coaching her son on her way to a 4-year, and here I am, and you're about like, you tell me what parent would let that happen.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But she had the insight to understand, right? She understands, what the Chicanos were through. She understood, she spoke to my mom. She understood our struggle. Wow. And she's like, no, man, like, this is just, he's a kid,
Mm-hmm.
So, James is a friend, a close friend, un hermano, till this day. And it turns out, Dr. Santalina Marrero is an expert in diversity and inclusion, man. She's a profound figure. She's a leading voice.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that was like someone who believed in me, someone who understood what we went through as Mexicans. And it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful because, you need that. You need the community. You need examples. You need figures. You need to believe. Right. And, oh, wow, here's this woman who believed in me, and my friend who's applying to a 4-year and stuff. So by the time I got back to my high school, I was already a different person. So, even though I wasn't a straight A student, by no means, I managed to, scrape by with C's and B's, and I graduated on time. Mm-hmm. So I was able to graduate on time. And the next step was community college because it was just unrealistic 4 year.
Yeah.
You can't go to a 4 year with a 2 point whatever GPA I had. So
Uh-huh.
it was a community college system that I enrolled in.
Yeah. But shout out to the community colleges, especially here in California.
Mhm.
Man, they in my experience, I went to Golden West and Huntington Beach, and then
Mhm.
that was a community college, and then after that, I transferred to Sacramento State. But I still think like I had all my best professors. Like if I had to do top five, four of the top five come from my junior college, and
Mhm.
if you go top 10, I would say like seven of my top 10 are from my community college. And I just think like there's still like sometimes a negative stigma to people who go to
Mhm.
community college. My goal
Mhm.
was to continue playing football because I had a bad knee injury my senior year in high
JUCO? Did you
school.
play do JUCO?
Yeah, I played JUCO. So
So have you seen what's the next Netflix series?
yeah, last chance you, right?
Did you see the Oakland one?
Yeah, Laney College. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So remember the Simone kid?
Yes, the one he is a father, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He that's 2 blocks away from my house.
Oh snap. Okay.
I think because see, what's crazy is, but you're right. Shout out to the community college system. I don't mean to cut you off, man,
No, you're
but
good.
you got me excited because so yeah. Shout out to the community college system. Some of my professors too, the best ones that I had prepared me, believe it or not, really
Hmm.
prepared me for medical school coming out of there. So like we had professors from UC, from Stanford,
Hmm.
that would teach at community college, and
Oh
you're
wow.
right, man. It saved us a lot of money, and it gave me a good foundation because it was unrealistic that jump too high. I had to go baby steps. So anyways, on the what is it called? Last Chance University? Is that what it's
Y-
called?
yeah, last chance you.
So I was watching it and I was all excited. I'm Laney College, Oakland, this and that. And
Uh-huh.
then they show this scene and I'm like, dude, that's by my house. I was like, dude, I was like, no, it can't be. I'm like, that can't be, because
Hmm.
the BART's there, and I'm like, it's the train and stuff, and I'm like, no, no, but that it looks too similar. And then it turns out, yeah, like that kid is like right, like like 2 blocks away. So I think
Hmm.
it was like 11th Street or something, and we grew up on 13th Street. And I'm like, dude, that was crazy because that documentary really, that one about Oakland really puts in. They do a really good job of culture. It's just a very hard cult. Like these kids work hard, man. Kids
Yeah.
work hard, sleeping in the cars, and that's the grind.
Yeah.
And that was my upbringing. It was a grind. It was working hard. It was just like I said, community college, and the just working class kids, man. We're trying to make it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right, 100%. The community college system, a big shout out, and I think you're right. They unfairly get a negative stigma, but it's not
Hmm.
fair because it's a valuable tool, and a formidable tool for success for us.
Right. So after you got finished up at the community college, where did you attend university at?
Well, this is crazy because there were steps there. So I'm at community college, and I'm doing well. I'm doing well. And I'm like, well, I think I could do this. I'm like, I started remembering. I'm like, I think I like medicine all those summers in Mexico and the hospital.
Yeah.
And then there was a program. Shout out to this program. I really want this program to get recognition. It's I gotta look this up real quick because I want to get the acronym right.
Okay.
Let me just get this. You need to edit.
No, no worries. No worries.
Hold on, because this is important, man. I really want to get this right. I just get two of the words. All right, so okay, so you were saying after community college,
Hmm.
where did I go to a 4 year? So there was some steps there, and I really had to prepare myself for pre med. I was really interested in medicine. I knew for my summers in Mexico, this is what I liked. And there was a program I remember very distinctly. I was walking through the halls in my community college. I was outside of like the biology lab or something, and I see a flyer, and it said Stanford University Minority Medical Alliance (SUMMA), and it was basically like a workshop, like a two-day workshop, um, that is aimed for underrepresented minorities that are looking to excel in the science medicine in particular. And it was held at Stanford. So it was a chance to go to Stanford and be like, and meet Latino doctors, Black doctors, and they would help you with like essay writing, with interviews. like that, and just hear the testimony from medical students that were Latinos or doctors that were Latinos that I can identify with. And that was crazy because the power program like that it's beyond just a little flyer and going and learning how to write. The power is that you felt included.
Yeah.
So I've never seen that before, man. I mean, you got to think, like, I grew up like Stanford was like this foreign concept.
Yeah.
Like, you don't think about that, man. Like it's like a different galaxy.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, I'm doing pretty well in junior college. I'm doing well in biology, and I see this flyer. Oh, you mean that they would invite me and I can meet Latino doctors? No, can't be. So I go, and it's Chris. I'm telling you, man, it's transformative because now you feel included. That's the power of these things, man. I was like, man, I showed up to campus on campus, and I'm like, it's just exhilarating, man. It does a lot to your mind.
Mm-hmm.
It does a lot to your mind. I feel sometimes it's mind over matter. And those baby steps, Noah, that I talk about, it's the baby steps of like of believing in yourself, and these programs bringing that power, and just hearing the testimony. Like I remember, I'll never forget this. I remember a Latino student. I think he was from LA. He's a Chicano,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a resident or a medical student at UCSF, and he starts rapping.
Oh.
And I'm like, yo, we grew up doing that. We grew
Yeah.
up like freestyling, and this kid was freestyling. And I'm like, no, this Mexican kid's up there. I'm like, dude, he's like me.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like me. I could do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. And I think he's wearing he's wearing some Nikes, shoes is a big thing in growing up. It's like, so, went to that program, and, I understood what it meant to organize your portfolio, your essays for a school, and what it means to apply for to prepare for the MCAT, which is the admission school test. And they break everything down into sizable chunks for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I transferred to the University of San Francisco. And by that time, I had a few scholarships in line. I still, it was expensive, but I wanted to go there because probably because it was a Catholic school, and I felt like just very comfortable at a smaller school. But I wanted to go to a smaller school because the statistics, by this time I knew that and actually I learned this at SUMA, to be honest. They break down, like, I think statistically, like how likely you are to get into a medical school depending on what institution you come from, and a painful reality, but it's the truth, right? So you got to play the game. You got to know.
Mm-hmm.
A painful reality that if you come from a private school, you have a higher likelihood of getting into med school.
Oh, wow.
It's just the truth, man. It's the truth, and it's just the way it is. I mean, I can't pretend to understand all the factors. So I understood what it meant. Like I probably could have gone to UC Berkeley, but I also knew that like my wife was already there. My girlfriend, she was at Berkeley, and I pre-med students. It was like it was very big, very intense.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to be a part of that. I wanted something smaller, low key, where I had the close interactions with the professors.
Mm-hmm.
So USF was it. So I went to the University of San Francisco, finished up there, and started applying to med school, man. And started to get interview offers, and one thing led to upstate New York, called Rochester, New York.
Oh, wow.
So that was it. I mean, that was the big step. But it's important to, for me to say that it was all baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first, I think the most impactful was going to a new high school,
Mm-hmm.
to adult school, believing in yourself. Like we didn't let the system define our future. Like we did it. My dad pulled me out of the high school. We went to a new one. He enrolled me in adult school, helped me enroll. We sought out, I sought out the SUMMA program. Shout out to that program. Really, maybe you have a little link, put it on, man. And so like it was these little things that led to the psychological growth. It was a growth mindset. We hear a lot about it. It was a growth mindset. I just believed in myself, man. And by this time I felt comfortable. All right, I have a really good foundation. I have a really good education behind my, under my belt. And I was like, let's do it, man. I have to apply to medical school, and I got in. got
Hmm.
into, you know.
Yeah, that's
But I felt
awesome.
like that. I felt like that was a chapter in my life, and then a new chapter began in medical school. But it definitely, I mean, that's a story.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome to hear it too, because I think the biggest thing when you grow up in like communities like us, from a young age, you're almost taught like it's not cool to be interested into school, and
Exactly.
so
When our ancestors were like invent basically science, right?
yeah,
Like the Mayans invented the concept of zero, but then it's not cool. Like that's not you, man.
right, yeah,
You are like your ancestors are like, look at Europe in the Middle Ages. You were in the dust. You were, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And that's you're right. You're right. Like, why is that? Why is that shame? Why do we have that shame that are smart for kids that are
right,
interested in science? Why?
right,
It should be the opposite. It should be like, no, you are a descendant of those
yeah,
of those poets of even if you don't like science, of literature, art, music.
hmm,
Go anywhere around the world. People love Mexican culture.
right, hell yeah,
you know, it's
yeah,
like you know what I mean. Like people hear mariachi and stuff, and it sense, man. People in Japan and everywhere.
yeah,
So I think you're right. Like, why do we have that shame?
hmm,
In kids that are smart and kids that want to excel academically, and I think what you're getting at is we're here to break that stigma.
yeah. But I think the challenging part too is in that high school age, or maybe after, for some people, you almost got to like reteach yourself um, different
Mm,
work ethic and different methods, because school has always been put as like, and it's like, don't even trip about it, or that kind of thing. That stigma for
mm,
being smart in school, to I feel like it's a lot, it's a bigger of a it's a big accomplishment to get a degree, no matter where you're from and your background. But I almost say it's 10 times more as challenging to come from uh an environment where it's just not as prioritized and it's not as paraded, and then you have to like reteach yourself as an adult, because there's a few times too where
mhm,
you just don't believe in yourself, and then you meet
mhm,
other people, and the belief in themselves comes so easily, and then you like learn about what kind of background they came from, or
mhm,
kind of community they came from, socioeconomics that
mhm.
they came from. It's like, oh wow, like that is different, like you had to step up because you grew up in, just based off the geographic location of where you were born and what high school you went to and what education you were exposed to. But it was a
Mhm.
challenge in college, because it was like, a lot of times when I was presented with challenges, I didn't really believe in myself that I was capable of doing stuff. And, it was always kind of like you
Mhm.
have to reteach yourself those ways.
It's a shock. I went through it too, and maybe I'll ask you this, but I think that well, here's the thing. Okay, we're in high school, right? So we're
Hmm.
a product of the public school systems, right?
Yeah.
So um, we know, right? We know as kids, even as early as middle school, we know that we're not the rich kids.
Right.
We know that, right? So we know that, but why aren't they telling us that? It's a problem. Like for example, right? For example, like okay, if you're born into a this is stats. If you're
Hmm.
born into a poor neighborhood, a lower socioeconomic school system, these are your chances.
Yeah.
But that's empowerment. So like I feel like honestly, I think we're doing kids a disservice. I think we need to teach kids that there are qualities. Like, hey, you know what? The pain is real because
Hmm.
that's part of growth. The pain is real. Accept it. Accept it. The pain is real. The suffering is real. Your neighborhood is at a disadvantage. It doesn't define you. And then these kids, right? Our kids would understand that. Be like, you know what? Yeah, we know that. We know that. And do you think that
Yeah.
will really come as a surprise to kids? No, it wouldn't come as a surprise. They know that, man. The problem is that you're giving these kids this illusion that's like, oh yeah, well you can go to 4 years. It's like, hold on, man.
Yeah.
Hold on, okay. This is a different reality. That
Hmm.
a kid in East LA is a reality than a kid in Beverly Hills.
Right.
Okay, so let's not lie to the kids from East LA, okay, or the kids from Southgate. Let's teach them. Let's tell them the truth. We need to teach that do that? How do we teach kids that okay, you're at a disadvantage, so here are ways how we're going to work around it.
Hmm.
Pipeline programs, this and that. So I think that I felt that I felt like it was disingenuous from the system. Like I felt like, why are you lying to me? Like I
Yeah.
know, I was like, why are you lying to me? Like I know, like I know the truth, man. Like, come on, man. Like I know where I come from. Why are you lying to me? Like
Yeah.
it just makes it worse. It makes you feel like it's a facade.
Hmm. And I
Um,
and I think
Go
too,
ahead.
just to kind of add to that, is like there are a lot of scholarships and different opportunities to pull money from to get those
Mm-hmm.
opportunities to go to four-year universities and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like stuff like that, I was never really exposed to because my parents didn't directly know
Mm-hmm.
about that. And,
Mm-hmm.
no one really close to them knew about that and kind of exposed me to that. But I remember learning in college when I was almost done, my senior year, I'm learning about, kids who are freshmen at Sacramento State and they applied for this, and that, or like a migrant worker
Mm-hmm.
scholarship. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yo, like my grandfather was that. I could have qualified for
Mm-hmm.
that. Like, but
Mm-hmm.
no one at my high school or in my circle exposed me and told me that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that again, you're doing that community and the members of that community a disservice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the same way for me. I didn't know how to apply to the MCAT, and that's why I didn't know how much it costs. I didn't know the importance of college prep courses. I didn't know any of that, and that's why these bridging programs like SUMMA, at Stanford are vital because they provide a window into the other world, and that's why it's key, man. You need these programs, you need these pipeline programs to help kids to motivate them.
Hmm.
But no, you're absolutely right, and we just need to be there. I mean, the AAMC, has definitions for underrepresented kids,
Hmm.
Black, Mexican American, Puerto Rican, Native American. I think those are the four major groups, right?
Hmm.
That are classified, but there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. Who disenfranchised communities? Who is dying from COVID?
Yeah.
Okay, so there you
Yeah.
go. These aren't just made up demographics. They're there for a reason because we are the ones suffering socioeconomically. We're the ones that are on the fringes of society, and we need to be like, this is why the power of having people like positions of influence, because we can, these kids are going to see, these kids from these neighborhoods are going to see us as examples.
Right.
Yeah, he could do it, like the kid I saw rapping at the
Yeah.
SUMMA con. I saw myself in him. I'm like, yo, I could do that. I'm
Yeah.
like, yo, I want to do that.
Uh-huh.
But that's the power, man. That's the power. And it's
Hmm.
like, we're underrepresented for a reason because we are on the fringes of the socioeconomic scale.
Hmm.
And it's very hard, man. It's very hard. Like you said, when you were maneuvering the system, you felt like you were probably by yourself. I was by myself. I was the only Mexican in my medical school class.
Hmm.
100 kids, man, 100 something kids. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa. I'm figuring things out. I'm knocking on doors. I'm like, I don't, like for example, I got my little, when I got my first like acceptance for medical school, and I decided to enroll in upstate New York. I was going to go to Rochester. Like, I didn't think that you can, and like ask for a redo. I forget the word, like on the financial aid.
Oh, okay.
It was
I didn't
just
know that either.
given. Like, bro, I don't know. No one in my head, dude. I'm the only one in my. I'm the
Yeah.
first one to go to med school. And
Yeah.
looking back, that added to a lot of my debt,
Hmm.
that I currently have. But like, yo, come on, man. I'm a first generation. You know, uh, it's crazy. Like my parents, working,
Hmm.
just doing everything. I mean, this medical school interviews are expensive, and looking back, you're right. It's knowledge is power, and you don't know. Like
Yeah.
you said, you figured it out your last year. You're like about the farmer program, this and that. And you don't know, man. So it's the in addition to the culture shock, it's just we're excluded because of the socioeconomics. We
Hmm.
are excluded. I mean, the data supports that.
Yeah. And I think that's sometimes why, going from like bigger picture politics wise, I think it's kind of like, you'll meet people who don't come from our communities and they just say, oh, well, why don't you guys just work hard or, like that kind of stuff.
Mm,
And they have a different angle of it because they never lived through it. Right. And I think, I don't even say it's ignorance. It's just naive. They don't know anything about that. And it's actually like when you get to see it and grow up in it, you're like, wow, there were these barriers placed in front of us, not for anything that we did, just because we were born, like you said, to this particular family and this particular geographic location. But other than that, like we didn't do anything to kind of, to deserve that. Obviously, like as you get older, sometimes you're a victim of your environment and you do, make bad decisions. But like you said, I don't think any kid is born evil or born bad. They're just
no,
a product of their
no.
environment.
but there's a reality, Noah, of implicit bias, man.
Hmm.
You know, like there, we stand this systemic oppression, systemic racism. Like
Yeah.
when I was at USF, by no means do I feel like I had a racist professor. I don't feel like anything was explicit. You know,
Hmm.
at least I hope not. And it was a really good school, with really good resources. But like I remember, and I had a 3.5 or higher GPA. I can't remember, man. It was like my junior year. So I'm like, okay, I could do it. I could apply to medical school. And I remember my counselor was like, yeah, you ain't gonna make it.
Mm.
Straight up, she's like, no, don't apply. You're gonna make it. And
Wow.
you know what I did? You think I think about the theme of my life before. It was like a replay of 10th grade in my head. You think I'm gonna listen to her,
The
or am
hell
I gonna
no.
roll the dice like my dad did? I rolled the dice, and I'm like,
Uh,
no, man, I'm betting on my talent. So I
mhm.
did it on my own, and I got in. And
Nice.
I got several offers. And that's an example though, because what if let's give you an example, right? So now I'm going to take you to medical school.
Hmm.
So medical school, I'm the only Mexican, and shout out to the diversity and inclusion office that made me feel included. There's a
Hmm.
dean there, Dean Lee, amazing man, just an amazing dean, uh, African American woman who really just took me under the wings and really made me feel included.
Hmm.
Really, honestly, just like a lot of sessions in her office. But these kids, man, I'm going to school with, summer homes, sailing. Yo, what? Like just hearing these conversations, you feel excluded. You're like, what is this?
Hmm.
Trust fund kids? Come on,
Mm.
man.
Yeah.
Because so all the minority kids stuck together. I'm here. I'm with all like, there's like one other Puerto Rican, a few other Puerto Rican, Salvadorian kid. I'm with you, man. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Uh-huh.
And that's how we survived. I'm like, no, man, this is intense, man. I mean, this is an intense environment. But then you started picking up on little things. Like I noticed, like the first 2 years of medical school are all book based. So it's all like you study like the you're basically studying the human body.
Right.
Like on cell level, and then you go to tissues, whatever, and the human cadavers and all. Then when you go to third year, you go to your clinical rotation. So you rotate neurology, psych, the whole thing, surgery.
Hmm.
And there are obviously the good rotations, like the good hospitals. Like you want to be at the best one, right, with the best teachers. And
Yeah.
I'm like, some of these kids they're like their parents were like doctors there,
Mm.
and their parents were doctors, presumably donors. And you're like, are they getting better rotations?
Mm.
Why am I getting the rotation
Yeah.
in out here? And I'm like, you feel it, bro. And
Yeah.
like I said earlier, don't lie to us. Don't lie to us. We see it, we feel it.
Hmm.
And I'm like, no, man, I can't be the only one. And that's the thing about like um, inequality is that sometimes you're a canary in a coal mine. Sometimes when you bring these things up, other people feel it. Oh no, you're right. Like
Hmm.
sometimes you have to be the first one to speak out. And I at that time I was just in survival mode. I'm like, I just want to graduate.
Right.
I just want to graduate and just do my thing. But you know what? No, I just want to mention something here, man. That's important. Is I feel like there's a secret to all of it. There really is. There's a secret that they don't teach us. Our kids from our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And one of those secrets is that you have it already. Like
Right.
your energy, bro. You take any of these kids. If that's a genuine energy, like what we have from our parents is genuine, man. Like like we come from a very ethical based culture
Hmm.
where like they show you those images of people who were martyrs from our Michoacan and Jalisco. Like this is strong
Hmm.
ethical construct, man. And like our grandmas walked those straight lines. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
Like like, I mean, you hear Emiliano Zapata, right? Rather die
Yeah.
on my feet than live on my knees. And those aren't just expressions for no reason. We're not used to like in my family. People were like politicking and sneaky and this and that. And there's always a bad few in a bunch, but
Hmm.
I feel like it was my grandma who made me, my mom who made me.
Hmm.
It was the old school principles, and I feel like I want to tell these kids like you already have it. All
Yeah.
you got to do is just maneuver all these tests and these little things. Once you figure that out, you're gonna
Yeah.
make it. Because the reality is, Noah, is the following. When you're a doctor, you're on call, hard shifts, man. You're 24-hour call. You're on call doing surgeries in the middle of. You know what's gonna get you through? It's not gonna be that summer home.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be that. You know what's gonna get you through? It's gonna be your grandfather's voice in your head, man. It's gonna
True.
be your parents telling you, hey, sabes que mi hijo, échale ganas. It's gonna be remembering,
Yeah.
like my dad would say. My dad
Hmm.
would say, you think reading is hard? You think your books are hard? Come and he was in high school. He used to say, come to the field, pick strawberries for an hour and see how hard that is.
Yeah.
And I knew
Oh
he was
man.
right.
Yeah.
He was right, bro. He was right. So I feel like telling these kids, I'm like, you already have it. You already have the secret sauce in you. Like that energy is authentic. You
Yeah.
cannot replicate that energy. But we just got to get these kids from point A to point B.
Right.
That's it. So let's maneuver this crazy system where these socioeconomic pressures exist, where these inequalities exist. In the words of Jonathan Kozol, he's savage inequalities exist. He studied
Hmm.
like the inequalities in the New York City system. Let's study this and let's get you from point A for point B.
Right.
That's really because we have something magical, man. Like
Yeah.
we really do.
Yeah. It's about redirecting it. And I believe you used it in an article that you wrote on the Kevin MD website is grit, right? Like just
Mm.
Hispanics. I
Mm-hmm.
just feel like I've always thought
Mm-hmm.
that too. Like when you wrote it in your article, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like we're like the hardest working people, but why aren't there more of us in politics, more of
Mm-hmm.
us as teachers, more of us as cops, more of us in whatever
Mm-hmm.
field, whether it's medicine or
Mm-hmm.
anything, we're
Mm-hmm.
underrepresented. But I think, not yesterday, this year, I did see something where like, class of 2020 was the largest like percentage of Latinos graduating from colleges
Mm-hmm.
all across the country. And so I
Mm-hmm.
feel like we're on the up and up. And like you said, it's just about navigating through those tricky waters, navigating someone through those obstacles. But with the
Mm-hmm.
grit that I feel like we're just almost naturally born with, I don't,
No, it's a thing.
yeah,
No, this is documented. I think the
yeah,
Pew Research Center. So this is legit research. Like,
yeah,
everyone talks about the American work ethic, right? American
yeah,
work ethic. Out there. That's policy. You know that, right?
yeah,
You know that. Like, it's actually like when you look at Latino work ethic, immigrant work ethic, it's actually like that element or believing in that is much higher in our culture than in the traditional American work ethic. So it's like
yes,
people they oversell this myth of like American work. It's not the American work ethic; it's the Latino work ethic.
yeah,
It's true. Go to any Cali.
right.
Who's working. Go to any construction site. We do not call in sick.
Mm-mm.
I don't call in sick. You gotta be hooked up to an IV, and it's crazy. No, I'm serious.
Yeah,
Calling sick. It's part of us, man. We get that's deep. That's deep, and I think it transcends so many experiences from our upbringing. These are little things that are passed along from our grandparents and stuff. And maybe it was all the revolutions. Maybe it was just the grit of it's something unique. It's
yeah,
unique that's given to us, but it is most definite. It's documented, and I think I do link in one of my articles.
yeah.
It's a Latino thing, the work ethic. We believe that we get ahead by working hard.
Hmm. And
Real
I think,
thing.
yeah. And I think the circumstances too, right? Like I think whether it was your parents, my grandparents, or anybody else who fled from Mexico, they were in search of a better life because the situation there in their hometown or in their wherever they
Mm-hmm.
were from, it wasn't desirable. It was
Mm-hmm.
unlivable. And I think even you can extend it outside of the Mexican culture, right? Like look at what is going on in countries like El Salvador or just other
Mm-hmm.
Guatemala or even,
Mm-hmm.
I've had a few Asian Americans on the show and their
Mm-hmm.
parents are victims of like really bad stuff that happened in Vietnam and think about
Yep.
like what happened
Vietnam.
there,
Yep.
Thailand.
Yep.
People
Mm-hmm.
had to flee because like
Mm-hmm.
they could have died like any given
Mm-hmm.
day. And so they come with like a different kind of hustle.
Well, like my parents, right?
Yeah.
With the 68 student, uprising. Like, my
Hmm.
mom had a freaking machine. She's a nursing student, bro. She had a freaking machine gun pointed at her. Like, what's
Yeah.
up? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So that was
Hmm.
like a 68, and that's probably why they came. They're like, I don't
Hmm.
want to do this.
Yeah.
you
It
know,
breeds a different kind of hustle.
it's a hustle, bro. It's a hustle. And you're right, man. It is a hustle. It's genuine, and it, it's ethically bound. You know, um, it's almost like our shield, bro, right? It's almost like we have like a Mexican shield, a Latino shield, and
Mhm.
it's like hard work, true, whatever, man. You inscribe it. It's your shield of beliefs, man.
True.
But it's
Yeah.
true. Like I can't, and this is important because this has, this is based on like psychological or literature from psychology. Like once you start to lie and once you start to corrupt yourself, like you deviate from like it has a damaging effect.
Hmm.
You know, and a really good author to read is Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Mm.
Says he really highly recommended. He listens to his lectures on YouTube, and he talks a lot about this. He's like, once you deviate from truth, like as a human being when you're lying,
Hmm.
when you're lying, it feels different. And I think that you know, I feel lucky that in my family unit, what I've seen is really like just I was raised with really honest people that, and I was taught to do that, and it's crazy because every time I'm honest and just hardworking, things work out.
Hmm.
They just work out it may take a little longer, but they work out.
Right.
But it's the key is like don't corrupt yourself, don't corrupt your soul, man, don't corrupt you know that perceived truth you see in the world. It's really important stuff, man. And I'm telling you, to be a good doctor, you really have to practice that way because there's a lot of things that come at you when you're a doctor. You gotta sort through a lot of things. I mean, and it's really my upbringing. That's my backbone.
Hmm.
That's what makes me a doctor. It's no joke.
Yeah. Well, I did want to bring up too another article that you wrote a few years back. You wrote
Mm-hmm.
how you were born in the wrong era of medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Mm-hmm.
described it as lifeless. I just kind of wanted to get your
Mm-hmm.
opinion on what inspired the article and what you were meaning to that.
So that article inspired by my experience in Mexico.
Hmm.
So in Mexico, I saw medicine firsthand as a little kid. I'm in this little convent hospital, and it was real. It was human, bro. You see the blood, like what I mean. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And it should be that way. Why are we shielding kids until I don't know medical school from seeing death? That's a problem with American culture. Is that we ignore death here in this culture. It's
Right.
well known. Like we have a taboo talking about death. Mexico, vamos al panteón. Flowers and
Yeah.
this and that, and it's different. It's different. And so why are we taking away from this beautiful experience? Like okay, I remember I met this se llamaba Salvador. So his name was Salvador. He's a young kid, Chava. He was Mexico City, and he was over at Rochester when I was a medical student. He was doing like a summer program. So he came from parents that were pretty well off in
Hmm.
Mexico, and it didn't take away from his grit. But he was a true Mexican, man. This kid was from Mexico City.
Hmm.
I believe he was from Mexico City. True grit, hardworking Mexican kid.
Yeah.
And his parents were business owners, whatever. But you know what he would do? He's like, hey, he told his parents, he was 11 or 12. He's like, I'm interested in medicine. So they call up one of their friends who's a surgeon,
Ooh.
and they're like, hey, my son, no, se llamaba Alberto. So Alberto's interested in medicine. And he scrubbed in at 11 or 12.
Oh, snap.
Yo, here's the crazy part. Ready?
Yeah.
We're talking about grit. Okay. I love
Yeah.
this story, man. And I haven't told the story in a while. So we're talking about grit. And this kid Beto, I noticed he was different. So I was teaching these kids. This is like a high school program. It was like a summer program, like in medical school. So I was like the faculty liaison, the medical school liaison, and these kids are like 14 years old.
Hmm.
14 going on 15. So they're like freshman to sophomore,
Hmm.
and majority of kids are from the area of upstate New York.
Hmm.
Whatever, wealthy kids. Whatever. It's just what it is. What it is. It's kids, innocent kids, and I noticed this Mexican kid, Beto. Carote. Yo, where you come from, man? He's like, and he told me the story, and I'm like, I'm interested in neurosurgery, this and that. I'm like, okay, man, you got your head on straight.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so how'd you telling me how he scrubbed in and this and that? And I thought he just scrubbed in. I'm like, that's cool, man. I'm like, that's how it should be. It should
Yeah.
be like you're exposed to this stuff early on.
Hmm.
And I remember like one of the workshops I had was take these kids through like how to culture bacteria.
Yeah. Okay.
And one of the workshops, it was like a 2-week thing. One of the workshops was suturing, how to suture. So we would get like these little pigs. So you get pigskins and you learn how to suture.
Mm-hmm.
And I was supposed to do it with um, a surgery resident.
Mm-hmm.
So a surgery resident was supposed to go in and teach these kids,
Yeah.
and this resident was busy, whatever, I don't know, couldn't make it. So this person canceled the last second, and I'm like,
Oh.
dude, I was like, the workshop's over, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, Beto's like, I'll teach him. I'll do it,
No.
bro. Oh my god, dude! I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it. No, it can't be. It can't be. It can't be, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I did. Show me, dude. This kid knew how to do all these stitches, bro.
Wow.
Freaking, I can't remember the name of it. Mattress stitches, figure eight.
Mm-hmm.
He's 15 years old. You
Yeah.
know what? He's
Wow.
fit. He's a baby, and I'm like, and I'm looking at him, and then I had this other faculty. It's much older surgeon who was. He's like a faculty sponsor, you know.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's like a retired surgeon. He's just there for fun. He just,
Yeah.
and I'm like, and I call him in. I'm like, yo, Dr. Caldwell. I'm like, check this out. Do you think he's like, it's legit? He's like he was blown away.
Yeah.
He's like, how? I'm like, yo, he's in charge. And all the other kids were like, I remember this, man. I remember this. All the other kids were like amazed, and you could see some jealousy.
Yeah.
You could see the jealousy. You could see it like, well, I thought Mexico was like, I remember one of the kids made a Mexico was like this and that. And Beto was like, bro, we got like bigger cinemas than you do in upstate New York.
Yeah.
Like, we know we're a full blown city.
Yeah.
Mexico City's no joke, man.
Right. Hell yeah.
We got some of the best, museums in the world. And he's like, he probably thought like upstate New York was a joke.
Uh-huh.
And so he ran the session, bro. He did the suturing session.
That's tight.
I'm like, I love that story, man. I love that story. I haven't told that story in ages.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a perfect platform,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what I want kids to understand, man. These kids who are from our neighborhoods in the US, it's like, this from Mexico City was just kicking ass.
Mm-hmm.
He was even impressing, these older surgeons that were like well established in their field. And I'm like, this Mexican kid, Mexico to the bone from Mexico City. I mean, this kid, like, straight up Chilango, man.
Yeah.
Straight up. Like, you're just like, but he had that grit. He's always like, siempre estaba como like, thinking. He's always thinking about the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have kept up with him, and I think he did land a residency here. I think he's well on his way to becoming a surgeon.
That's crazy,
right? It's a crazy story, bro. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful story.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful story.
Yeah, but that's one thing my mom told me about her experience, because I believe she moved. She was like 8 years old to the U.S. and she told me like the school system in Mexico was ahead, so she had to redo the third grade when she got here to the United States, even though she had already passed the third grade in Mexico. It's just they were behind. And then I have another tia who I interviewed not too long ago because she's running for mayor in the city. Nice. She moved in, I think later, I want to say like 11 or 12 to the United States, but same thing. She like was almost like too smart, or whatever age you're for fourth grade. I think she moved, so like 9 or 10. Yeah, but she was like way advanced for like fourth and fifth graders, and like to where she would get impatient. She was saying like for how slow of a pace the United States curriculum was moving compared to the Mexican curriculum.
Well, in the whole world, 18 you go to medical school, which is a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing because for me it was probably a better thing that I went to community college and whatever, But you need to be fast tracked. I think you need to be like I in 8th grade I was very interested in science. I should have been. It would have probably been better for me if I was fast tracked. At that age, just be in that pipeline. Mm-hmm. Te iba a decir, I'm going to take a quick break. ¿Voy al baño? ¿Está bien?
Yeah. Okay, está bien.
Cut this out. Refill.
No. Yeah. That's one thing.
¿Me tienes?
Yeah. No, I was going to say, just going off that thing about being yourself and being a doctor too.
Yeah.
That's one thing I noticed from like your Twitter, right? Your Twitter account. And I wanted to ask you about hip hop because I'm a big hip hop head myself. And spending some time in Sacramento, I got exposed to
Mac Dre.
Yes, the Bay Area scene. And so I just wanted to ask you, like, what was the Bay Area scene of hip hop to you?
It's crazy. So hip hop scene, very deep question, man. We can do a whole episode on that. So shout out to my older brother, Leo Padilla, because he's 10 years my senior. So he exposed me to a lot of the hip hop of the 90s, because I was born in 85. So I was coming to, I mean, I was just a little baby, age, 10, 11 years old in the mid-90s. What do I know, right? But
Yeah.
you hear it on the, but he really filtered through the BS and gave me the good stuff.
Mm.
So I would say this. All right, 90s, 90s Bay Area hip hop, Pac, right? Tupac. I mean, that's it right there, man. And, he's, is basically repping Oakland.
Yeah.
I mean, the LA thing, but come on, man. He was repping Oakland. He was
Oh yeah.
rapping with local rapper Spice One,
Mm-hmm.
who represents Hayward a lot.
And Shock G too, right?
Shock G,
Yeah.
Souls of Mischief. I mean, this is just old school Bay Area stuff, And for me, this is my experience, right? So I'm gonna take you, I'm gonna walk through as if I was in the hallways in middle school, what I was to. So I'm in the hallways, and I'm listening to kids rap about Pac, rap the lyrics to changes, so when changes came out, I was like, wake up in the morning and ask myself,
Yeah.
is life worth living? Shit up, blast myself. Those are heavy words for a
Yeah.
sixth grader to say.
Yeah.
That's deep, man. I remember that. And then, what else? Of course, like Dre. I think the first exposure to hip hop I got was like in first or second grade. I remember the tapes. We had actually, I remember one of the first songs was from it was a Mexican American group.
Mm.
It was In Too Deep, I think was their name. In
Okay.
Too Deep. It was Back to the Hotel. Old school Chicano from Vacaville. They're from the Bay Area. You should
Oh,
look it
okay.
up, man.
Yeah.
Vacaville. Too Deep, and it was Back to the Hotel, and it was a little like jazz loop that they had. The old school Chronic album was big, man. That
Yeah.
old school G Funk, that was huge. I remember everyone playing that. I was a little baby, I was 7, 8 years old, but I was hearing that like it's like this and like that and like this and I mean this is like the soundtrack of our lives, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
this is real, and I'm just listening to it. I'm like, what are you listening to? I'm a little kid, I'm not really. And I would say probably like in freshman year, that's when I started to really get into hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
Eighth grade freshman year, Pac was big, and then freshman year, I think what really made an influence on me is my favorite. Is controversial as a Bay Area kid, very controversial for me to say this, but it was Nas. I think
Oh
Nas
yeah.
took it for me. Nas took
Mm-hmm.
it for me, and I was like, yo, I got sucked into that whole Jay-Z Nas battle. That was now in the 9th, 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, bigger than music back then. That was it was a moment in culture, a moment in hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I think it was Nas because of he was a different rapper because of his lyrical complexity.
Right.
So like, okay, I like all that West Coast thing. That's cool. I like it. I can listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
But Nas was on the level, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Okay. And Pac was a poet, and there's no question. Like I'm not taking away from Pac's contributions, at all, or I'm not taking away from his music, but Nas was just a different,
Yeah.
even says it, the game says it with Nas, it's like, I was the only Compton with the New York state of mind. He says something about, for my homies, it was too complex when Nas, I was the only Compton dude with the New York state of mind. Like he says it, and it's true because that's how I felt back then too. I'm like, you guys ain't listening to Nas because it's too complex.
Yes.
But like I loved it, man. I loved it. And the things he would drop, man, like New York State of Mind was a great song. Again, exposed through my brother. And then it was written was a great album, and he ruled the world. And like the little lines he would drop, history's told foul, but I'm as wise as the old owl.
Yeah.
Deep, man. I mean, he was telling you, he's like, we know the school system is not there for us, but I'm as wise as the old, I'm a hustler, getting out of that. Mm-hmm. And then Stillmatic was just, for me, it's like, there's no debate. Like if anyone ever thought Jay-Z, got like Nas took it, there's a word for it. It's called ether. He ethered him. We still say that today. It's done. It's over. And, like certain song, One Mic, come on, man. One mic, I mean, that's just all it is. One mic, like that's just, it's on too many levels. Words can't do it justice. You're the man, which is a crazy flip on the sample. But you're the man, where he says, the chair became a keen stone. My destiny found me. It was clear why the so painful metamorphosis. This is what I changed to. Mm-hmm. But God, I'm so thankful. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I could sit here and just go through it. And the thing is, like, we know now that it was more than music because like the like Harvard University actually has a Nasir Jones fellowship.
Yeah.
And so like they know, like that's the thing, like it's more than music, man. This is history. So like my dad had his poets growing up, his
Hmm.
poets talking about the things in Mexico, this and that. For me, Nas was he was our poet.
Right.
He's the poet that talked about these realities, that talked about one mic and the struggle and schools, really not doing his justice. And then the growth that Nas has shown, like with
Hmm.
his album King's Disease, is just amazing, man. I mean, it's just like there's a song on there called 10 Points when he talks about like
Yes. Gotta let
I'm
go of
talking
your.
about he's like
Gotta let.
he's
Yeah.
like, dude, like it's deep, man, because he talks about growth and he's like, I don't trust people I don't trust people because of something that happened to me as a kid,
Hmm.
but as an older person, you got to let it go,
Hmm.
or king, got to let it go.
Yeah.
The exact lyrics, but it's to that point.
Right.
And for me, that's what it's about. He's a true poet.
Hmm.
For me, that's why Nas, like, because I saw him evolve. Perhaps Pac would have had the same effect if he was still alive.
Right. True. You never
I'm
know.
sure he would have evolved into that,
It
but
would have grown. Yeah.
he would have grown. But Nas, man, I mean, he's deep, man. That's why, like, it's always gonna be there for me. Like, it's always gonna be Nas, and and the old Pac stuff. Hail
Yeah.
Mary, all these songs. Like the energy's there.
Yeah.
So definitely, man. I think that music is a huge part of our upbringing, and the thing is too, Noah, like what really bothered me growing up, and I didn't have the right words to express was, when you would play hip hop around, like, let's say I'm in medical school and I'm in the operating room, you play hip hop, a lot of older, I mean, this is a microaggression. You have
Right.
like an older person, oh, that's not music, that's like,
Yeah.
what do you know?
Right.
That's our music. What do you know?
Right.
No, that no, 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 no. Get out of here, man. I want to play I want to play this. Like, no, I don't want to listen to I do not identify with whatever you're playing. I want to play my music.
Right.
And now I would say that.
Hmm.
And so, like, I remember a big moment for me as a doctor was I was at Sinai. So I did my residency at Cedar Sinai. This is in LA.
Hmm.
And I remember being in an operating room, and there was two surgeons. They're two black surgeons, amazing, man, amazing, and they're just playing hip hop in the OR.
Okay.
And I love that because I'm like, this is they're living their life to their own beat, literally.
Yeah.
And it made me feel like, okay,
Hmm.
yes,
Hmm.
yes, they don't have to conform to anyone else's rules. Like, they want to
Right.
listen to Tupac, they want to 2 Chainz, yes, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
It's
That's music.
right.
It's music. And so
Right.
that's why I feel an immense source of pride when it comes to hip hop, because we grew up with that.
Hmm.
And it's crazy how a rapper from Queens, New York had such a
Yeah.
profound effect on a kid from the Bay Area, from Northern Cali.
Hmm. But isn't that crazy? Like, that's the beautiful thing of music, right? Because I'm a big Nas fan as well, and Illmatic
Mm,
was released the same year I was born, 1994. So like
there you go.
I feel like that's just when you describe hip hop to people like us, it's the soundtrack to our lives, and maybe
Boom.
that's why there was a disconnect from, that older doctor, or even my mom. She always, like, especially when I'd have parties, with my birthday, and I would want to play my music on, the speaker system at our house. And she would always be like, no, but none of that hip hop shit. And I'm just like, you mean, like, how are you gonna, tell me how you gonna, suppress like how I want to express myself? And I remember one song specifically, she never liked it, Juicy by Biggie, right?
Oh, it's a great
I
song,
love the
man.
way he talked about, like, he came from nothing into now he's on, interviews with Robert Leach and talking about,
Mm,
playing his Sega
mm.
Genesis and all that kind of stuff.
Oh man, Super Nintendo,
Yeah.
Sega Genesis. When I
Yeah.
was dead broke, man, I couldn't. Yeah, no, no, it's classic, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just remember I'm glad as I got older, I just dove deeper into it, right? I didn't listen to my
Mm,
mother or just any outside experiences about saying, oh, hip hop is this or hip hop is that.
mm-hmm,
And it's, while I may have never done some of those things that they talk about in their songs, I know people who did. I had family members who did,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
gone through that same struggle. So I feel like
mm-hmm,
that music
mm-hmm,
relates more to me and my culture and my whole life experience compared
mm-hmm.
to some other stuff,
Oh,
people
dude,
listen to.
no question, man. Listen to some of Pac's lyrics, like
Hmm.
like the song "Against All Odds."
Yeah.
Man, I mean, I mean, I'm living through some of that today, you know?
Uh-huh.
These are deep lyrics, man. I mean, he's vocalizing, you know, his struggle in the system. You know, I mean, it's very profound. I mean,
Yeah.
very profound, man. You know, it's something that, you know, there's a reason why you know, this is being taught at, you know, university courses, you know,
Right.
because it really is poetry. It's poetry at the time, and you know, it's disenfranchised community give us a voice. You
Hmm.
know, I mean, that's just the reality, man. You know, like, you know, Nas is crazy, right? So he made Illmatic when he was 17, 18 years
Yeah.
old.
Yes.
And, you know, he probably didn't think he was going to be alive, and I'm sure past the age of 2021. He said it on interviews. And
Hmm.
so he's not rapping to become famous. He's rapping just to rap. And so it's
Yeah.
very authentic.
Storytell.
Yeah, storytell. So like, you know, Nas, Wu Tang. So I don't know why, but maybe it was my brother's influence, but I really like the East Coast, the deep East Coast rap.
Hmm.
And I think it was because it was different. It sounded different. You know, it sounded like just everything. You know, the RZA's beats, everything was just
Yeah.
different. It was just different, and that G funk was cool, but it was all around me, and so
Hmm.
I felt like it was unique to have that East Coast because no one was listening to it, or very few people were listening to it.
Yeah.
You know, around the Bay Area, even though people knew what's up. I mean, people knew, like, you know, it was a. You know, I'll tell you a crazy story.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right, so I'm on a plane. This is at medical school. It's about, let's see, it's like my second or third year medical school, and or was it a residency? No, I was in residency, so I was already at Cedar Sinai, and I'm flying from LA to Oakland to visit my family.
Hmm.
So it's a next to Oakland flight, and you know, the plane. You know, there's like tons of these flights. There's a lot of these flights every day,
Right.
and the plane's not that full. And I noticed in the back, I see E40.
No way.
Yeah, check this out. This is crazy. Yeah. So I see E40, right, and he has his two, you know, cholos, man. You know,
Yeah.
these bodyguards. You know,
Yeah.
these are straight up. You know what's up. You know where he's from. He's from
Yeah.
Vallejo. So you know, these guys are like his local homies.
Hmm.
And I'm like, hey man, do you mind if I respectfully, you know, I know, you know, it's like, hey, do you mind if I ask E questions? And they were like, they looked at E40, and E40 looked. He was like, yeah, it's cool. You know, I'm not there to cause trouble, man. You know, I have my
Yeah.
backpack on. I'm a little, you know, I'm just there to ask questions. And so I right next to him, but like it was like he was in his own aisle by himself,
Uh-huh.
and I was on the other side, and I'm like, hey man, I have a few questions, you know. And he's like, yeah, you know, what's up? And
Hmm.
he had the rhino chain,
Oh.
rhinoceros, and I think it was Ciquidit.
Hmm.
But you know, he had a big rhino, you know, iced out chain.
Hmm.
And I was like, hey man, so first of all, you know, like, you're really appreciate your music, because I knew, like, you know, for me, like, even though like E40 wasn't my favorite rapper, like his contributions to the Bay Area hip hop
Oh
scene was
yeah.
huge, you know,
Hmm.
and you know,
His lingo. Yeah.
his lingo, he had a profound effect, you know,
Hmm.
on the game, and hip hop in general. And there was a story that intrigued me. It was a historical that intrigued me. So I asked him. I'm like, hey, is it true that you and Biggie had beef? And he looks at
Mm.
me, because I'm a deep hip hop head. You know, again, I
Yeah.
get this from my brother. And so like, he looks at me. He's like, yo, that was real.
Oh
He's
shit.
like, yo, that was real. He goes, there was some bad blood there, man. And
Oh man.
I'm like, and I was, you know, he didn't go into details. Like, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, but you know, we squashed it before he died. You know,
Uh-huh.
rest in peace, Biggie. He goes, that's real.
Damn.
And then I was like, man, I'm like, that's crazy. And then I was like, and I asked him, I'm like, you're such a you have such a unique way of rapping. Like, for me, like, an equivalent East Coast rapper is Ghostface Killer.
Yeah.
So I
Oh.
really like Ghostface with his wordplay and everything. I was like, I was like, why don't you link up with him?
Hmm.
And I remember he's like, that would be hot. He goes, that will be good. He goes, dude, I like Ghostface. I like Ghost. I don't know. I haven't really followed his career too
Hmm.
closely. E40s. I don't know if he ever did a song with Ghostface, but if he ever did, I want to take a little bit of credit for that. It happened after
Yo.
2010. I think it was 2010
Hmm.
when I met him. But that was a great for me, man, because like it took there was a story that him and Biggie had beef back in the
Hmm.
day, and I didn't know if it was true or not. It just was mysterious to me. And then for E40 to confirm that, on the plane from LA to Oakland,
Yeah.
and that was profound for me, as a hip hop head. I was like, dude, this is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
straight, he said it. He didn't give any details, but he says, yeah, it was real,
Hmm.
real. And I'm like, dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy because I think Biggie did disrespect him on an article or something like that. There was some
Mm.
disrespect there, and but they squashed it, and stuff. But he
Yeah.
confirmed it, man.
That's crazy. It's
Crazy.
just different times back then too. I feel like '90s, it was a lot more push to have beef, and whether it was Pac and Biggie or Nas and Jay Z, like they're just it seemed like people crave the conflict more than they do now, right? And
Well, it was regionalized, right?
yeah, that too,
And
of course, yeah,
it wasn't mass market. So these guys weren't out there. I felt right. They weren't out there to just make careers. They were out there to survive.
yeah,
And so for them, it's like you're calling out my hood, like like of the whole Nas Jay Z thing because it was like Queens, Brooklyn,
hmm
and it's like wow,
hmm
even though I'm in California, it's like if Jose and Oakland went at it or
yeah,
whatever, even though it's like different, you know what I mean? It's like wow, like that would be profound. And if you're from Oakland, you definitely think that your neighborhood's better than San Jose's, and
yeah,
whatever San Francisco. And it's crazy because we never had anything like that. Just thinking about it, we never had anything like that in California. We never had. I don't remember that like anything
mm-mm.
crazy between Oakland and Jose or Oakland and San Francisco. But imagine Queens, Brooklyn just going at it. And that's intense, man. I mean, that was
Yeah,
like the height of the beef. We were all like huddled in. You had to hear the response. When Ether came out, it was done. It was done.
yeah.
But no, I love that stuff, man. I mean, you watch the show Drink Champs?
Mm-mm. Now,
Oh, you gotta look it up,
what
man.
network is that on?
So Drink Champs. It's not. It's a podcast. It's like an
Okay.
audio visual that Nori does a. So he sits down with like all these rappers from the '90s, like Fat Joe,
Oh, okay.
Nas, Wu Tang, the members of Wu Tang, and he talks about these stories, and he goes
Hmm.
back, he talks about them, and I'm always like imagining, like I want to hear the stories, like the little nitty gritties. That's what I want to listen to, the little nitty gritties of the Nas and Jay Z beef. What
Yeah.
prompted that? That's the history. The secrets. Whatever. Like that's the stuff that interests us, right? Because that's our we're hip hop heads. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that there's a show on Netflix that they did was Hip Hop Evolution. I
mm,
think kind of similar to that podcast you're telling me about. It's just it goes region by region and kind of talks about like the early shakers and then who kind of burst onto the scene, who kind of changed the scene. But it goes from everybody from like Timbaland all the way dating back to like, Grandmaster Flash and some of the influences to that. And I thought that was really cool too, because it goes, like I said, region by region, city by city. Talk about the people who helped like Lil Wayne come up or the people. And a lot of times they didn't get the like major stars to interview, but they always had like the major star, like they had Lil Wayne's. Who was the guy that brought him up? Is it
was it Juvie?
no? It was the guy from New Orleans, Manny Fresh, right? Um,
Manny Fresh is a producer. Yeah,
yeah,
Manny Fresh
he
is a producer. Yeah, he
yeah.
has some really good beats, man. He
Oh,
has
he
some really
did,
good
yeah.
beats. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it was cool, like like so while they weren't able to get Lil Wayne for the documentary, like they got Manny Fresh and like a bunch of people who were close to Wayne, and it's like,
Yeah,
so you're getting that close experience, and I feel like they did a good job of like kind of touching. I don't think
yeah.
they got like past 2015 on the spectrum of things, but like still, like I would be interested to see if they continue that because like for sure, like hip hop is his own like man, it's booming now, but like it's still relatively new compared to these other music genres, and
Yeah.
it's just taken off, I think, further than what a lot of people, especially the founders of hip hop, would have ever thought and imagined.
Well, I mean, Nas is like, these guys they could just make a living talking about their like people would just pay the money just to listen to them. Like he
Yeah.
doesn't have to rap. He could just sit down and just interview Nas. Like, dude, people were like he would fill auditoriums. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, how much intrigue it has.
Hmm.
Like that. You're right, man. It's profound. And even like the smaller, like I remember going to LA when I was in LA and seeing GZA. So the GZA from Wu Tang, and he,
Yeah.
he had packed a pretty good crowd in
Hmm.
at the Nokia Center. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, man. Like it's I think because it's deeper, right? It's deep music for us. It just means it's something else, and it's authentic. It's authentic, and it's the lyrics just mean something. You
Hmm.
know, right, man. It's special.
Yeah. If you had to give, I know it's kind of like spur of the moment, but if you had to give like top three albums like that you've ever listened to hip hop wise, what would you go top three?
All right. Shout out to my brother because he introduced me to this whole
Hmm.
this era of hip hop. So top three, um, Illmatic has to be number one.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
has to be number one. And you know what's crazy about Illmatic is that it grew on me over time.
Hmm.
Like when I first listened to it, I was like, sounds funky, it's cool, I like lyrics, but with time, I understood. I'm like, whoa, I'm
Hmm.
in like New York State of Mind, the Genesis, New York State of Mind, like
Hmm.
these are deep and just wow.
Hmm.
So I think that album has grown with me. I think that's why it's my favorite because
Hmm.
it's grown with me. Like I think it means more to me now that I'm an adult, a little older than when I was a 19-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Second one, I would say it's tough, man. I really like, what, man? I really think a solid album, start to finish, is Jay Z's Blueprint, the first one. I
Okay.
really think it's solid, man, because it was different than Nas, right?
Yeah.
But it was still like so unique, and you felt like he was up to something big. Like
Hmm.
it was right before he really became, like, if you remember, I think for me what did it with that album was, if you remember, it was what song was it? I never change. I never change. I'm still a hustler, outside of the same clothes. So the song, I think, is called "I Never Change," and that's a Kanye West produced track.
Yeah.
So Kanye's career really started around that era, that album, and so, like, that, I think Kanye's on the hook. So to me, like, that's why it means so much. That's like the beginning of something.
Yeah.
That it's like raw, man. Um, I never cared too much for the takeover of the song because I thought it was good, but obviously I think Ether took it. But like H to the Izzo was huge.
Hmm.
In the H to the Izzo, he talks about becoming like an entrepreneur, like really growing up as a business person.
Hmm.
Hola Ovito, that dude. I mean, taking the whole Latin spin on things, talking about Perico, like all these. I mean, dude, come on, man. I mean, he's just that. I never heard a rapper do that. Um, So I mean, that album is definitely like there, and I would say the third one, it has to be a Wu Tang album, man. And I
Mm.
think probably the Wu Tang one is gonna be a hard time, man. But it's gonna be Liquid Swords, man.
Oh,
The
okay.
just I was gonna give it to Cuban Links, but then again, this is more is my brother's influence, especially with this one. But I think the reason why is because it was just so lyrically unique. Like, I think the art the art of the whole samurai thing, bro. That was just
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy. But that was cool, man. Like, how we talk about, like, it wasn't cool to be into science,
Hmm.
and it was cool, but like I felt like the Jizza made it cool to talk about science. Like, picture blood baths and elevator shafts, like these murderous rhymes typed from genuine craft.
Yeah.
Like, that's the beginning of the Duel of the Iron Mike, or Ghostface on what was it? I think it's called the Fourth Chamber. With that crazy beat, man. If you could loop in that beat to this podcast, it would be crazy. The Fourth Chamber.
Yeah.
If you could loop, oh man, that intro, it's, dude. They were on something else, man.
Hmm.
Like, they weren't. There's no frame of reference, in my opinion, to that album that I've heard anywhere else. Like, he was so
Yeah.
ahead of his time. And Kanye even talks about it. He talks about the RZA, like how he mixed up samples, and he was ahead of his time. But
Yeah.
like, Ghost has a line there, like, why is the sky blue? Why is water wet? Why did Judas rat to the Romans? Why Jesus slept? I'm like,
Ooh.
oh,
Ooh.
like, you're
Yeah.
done. He
Yeah.
went. He went. Cool.
Yeah.
Like who does that?
Yeah.
Like, crazy, right?
Hmm.
Henny. He's talking about Henny the Eighth, and what else does he say? Like, talking about, what does he say? Built like Genghis Khan
Mm-hmm.
with Rex Way while he's on. I judge wisely, and then I think it's what's the name of the one? Ooh, Killer Priest. I think it's Killer Priest, right? He's like, I judge wisely, as if nothing ever surprised me. I mean, it's just crazy, man. It's
Yeah.
just crazy, you know. Like the fact that they were just so unique and so, you know, and then it's a hard tie because I think Cuban Links, you know, only built for Cuban Links was there for Raekwon, and then
Mm-hmm.
like the Nas verse, right? And I think that's why like I want to mention the Nas verse on Verbal Intercourse. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Verbal Intercourse, that, you know, the song on Only Built for Cuban Links, but he's like, um, the whole intro is just wicked to that song, man. It's just
Yeah.
deep. It's just, you feel like you're just in another world, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Lights, Cameras, and Gold. We're in gold. My stampede in a piece. My in a piece of rise like yeast. The leaving savages to roam in the streets, live on the run.
Mm-hmm.
Trick my wisdom with the system that imprisoned my son. I mean, I hold the gold leaf. I hold the gold leaf nonchalantly as raunchy, but things I do in life is real. They never haunt me.
Crazy.
I
I
mean, come on, man. Like Nas, like and now I'm doing a disservice. I knew that one by memory. Just, lights, cameras, and gold. Lights, cameras, and something glamour, glitter, and gold. I unfold the scroll. See the stampedes. Oh, I can't remember, man. But like
yeah.
that. Oh my god, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe we should just play that verse because that's considered one of the best verses of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, man, and like just the stories, you know, like, and you know, there's other like New York rappers that I like Fat Joe. I really thought, you know, his whole contribution with the Boricua scene and, you know, the whole thing, and that's because even though I'm Mexican, you know, up in California, like I knew like Terror Squad, Big
Mm-hmm.
Pun,
Right.
like that song, uh, what's the song that Fat Joe and did, Deep Cover,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Deep Cover, you know, Twins. I mean that verse, you know, from Big Pun is just, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And
Insane.
that's the thing, you know, like it's deep, you know. And then of course, you know, got Pac and all his albums, and by no means am I, you know, as a California kid, I'm like, you know, I'm placing Pac second to no one, but I'm just saying, like for me, I mean, these are just the albums, you know, because I listen to Pac almost every day too,
Yeah.
you know, and you know his songs and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and his album. For me, it was just the East Coast had a unique grab on my uh, psyche.
Yeah. And it's good to have a variety on that. I can kind of relate too, because like I really, as a kid, I didn't know a whole lot about them, but A Tribe Called Quest, I feel like as an
Mhm.
adult, I've
Mhm.
really resonated with them more because they have like I've noticed I'm more of like a mellow person and they have like that mellow like beats while they're kind of like you know what I mean?
So
Like
you
the
know, you could rap electric relaxation.
oh I couldn't rap it, but I could try my best, I guess. But it was they were just so smooth with it, like
Smooth.
Bonita Applebum and like
Mm-hmm.
and they,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like
Mm-hmm.
man, some of the stuff that they have, and even like, but then I was also too like I really like KRS-One and some of the songs that he would have, and how he was like a little bit more
But you
militant.
know what song's really good from KS is his diss track to
Mm,
because you know it's Brooklyn, right?
yeah,
So when he was going at, it was MC Shan. I mean, this is before my time, you know, with
yeah, this is
MC
before my
Shan.
time too. Yeah,
But he's like, oh my, those diss songs, man. Oh. And then that song that they put, the song that they use in the Last Dance and the Jordan,
yeah,
his song, um, "Step
mm,
into the world."
yeah,
Oh, dude, like that's what I liked about the Last Dance is that they did it justice because they mixed the era's music
hmm
with the Jordan movement. So
hmm
like that, they had that episode. Like for me, one of my favorite episodes was the one with where it was like with Kobe,
right,
showing Kobe. And if you remember, like one of the scenes they played Nas's "If I Ruled the World."
yeah,
I believe it was on the same one, you know, "If I Ruled the World," because I mean, dude, that was it, man. It's
yeah,
97, right? 96, 97, and it's the whole. That was it back then. So it's like, I mean, just imagine how, you know, it's a golden era. I mean, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna watch Jordan in the finals.
hmm
TV and I'm gonna listen to this Nas album that
Yeah.
just came out. I mean, that's special.
What a time to be alive, huh?
That's special, man. And you knew it too, right? So you know when you're watching Jordan, you knew it back then. You're like, this kid's special. Like this dude's special.
Right.
Like it's special. Like you just
Hmm.
knew it. You're like, wow.
Hmm.
Like you just knew it. You're like, this Jordan's gonna take it. Like you just knew it. You're
Yeah.
like, nah, man. As I love Sean Kemp, Oakland, this and that, but you knew Jordan was good.
Yeah. Yeah. And you saw the passing of the torch to Kobe, right? And then like
Oh,
LeBron,
cool.
obviously I think LeBron was one of the few from like, a lot of times we overhype those high school like phenoms. But like LeBron actually like, pulled through. There was a lot of high school dudes that kind of got
Oh,
washed or never
hey,
had the.
Jordan, look what I got.
Oh, there you go. Oh, the shot over what is that? Craig Elo of the Jazz?
Was it? I don't even know his name. I just know it's Jordan shooting the shot, man. So
Yeah.
you got Jordan. And I got my diploma.
There you go.
The last shot, man.
Greatness surrounded by greatness.
Great. There you go. Bro. No, you're right, man. It's profound. Like LeBron was in Ohio right now. I'm in Cleveland, and yeah, LeBron, like, dude, you go around and you're like, wow, like
Hmm.
the love that people have for LeBron is just, it's major. Like
Hmm.
and I appreciate that. Even though I'm a Golden State Warriors fan. To heart.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I grew up,
Right.
Like, hey, we were the laughing stock of the NBA forever, so whatever.
Yeah. Every franchise deserves their chance, maybe
I know.
except
I
for
feel
like.
bad for the Clippers.
Yeah, I mean, there's
I
some
feel bad for the Clippers. But like the Warriors, man. I mean, come on, man. We
Yeah.
got a little run, and 2016 we got LeBron, even though Draymond didn't deserve to be suspended for that game, but whatever.
Mhm.
But the respect that people have for LeBron is major, and I respect that.
Yeah.
Respect that, man. We know what he does. I really like the more than an athlete,
Yeah.
movement. I think that's really good. I think it's really positive, and I think that he's a really good role model for.
Oh, 100%. I think he's
I respect that.
Yeah, I think he's one of the more. He's probably one of the best, at least in my generation. He's probably one of the better off the court and like the things that he does, whether it's starting his own school and just being so charitable, and even those videos that he makes, like, and he posts on social media. Like, I think some people think they're cheesy, but like a lot of people don't have father figures, so like he's kind of showing what it means to him to be a father. He's one of those kids that just came from a really low socioeconomic community and is trying to change the narrative, and that I respect like more than anything.
The business aspect.
Mm-hmm.
The business aspect is key because he took his friends and like you read the stories how they were trying to like discredit his, I forgot his name, his buddies, like talent scouting.
Yeah.
They're trying to discredit him because like he didn't have an official license or whatever. I mean, to totally try to discriminate. Like, but I really love the way that it's like J. Cole said, just like LeBron, make more chips. Making chips for my friends, or making money for our friends in that song. What was the song? Middle Child? I don't remember. But he says it. He says that, and it's like, it's true. Like he's such a good figure because it's like that's what I aspire to. Like for me, like I want to see a Latino succeed. I want to see that because for me, like that's the way we should see it. Like for me, like our success is shared. And it should be that way. And so that's why I think I like LeBron and what he does off the court, as you said, even though I don't really care about his shoes.
I
don't really care about his shoes, man. I'm like, they're too heavy. They're too heavy. I can't wear them at work.
Right.
They're too heavy. I'm like, it's too clunky. I'm like, oh, I can't.
Yeah, they're built for like the power forward center types, like the big kids in high school trying to play low post or something like that.
I don't know, man. I just they're too heavy for me. But what's a good shoe is the Kevin Durant. It's a really comfortable shoe. Very underrated. I think it's very underrated. Very comfortable on the feet and it's a solid shoe.
Yeah. Have you ever tried the Lillards? I'm a really big fan of those.
The Dame Lillards, man, is what brand is that? What brand is that?
Adidas.
It's Adidas. No, the only Adidas I ventured to recently were the what's that unique material that they made?
The Boost.
Yeah, the Boost. And I had a but I felt like they just I never got into the Yeezys.
Okay.
I never got into that. Maybe it was too new school for me. For me, it's the two shoes that I really got into that I still keep up with are Jordans and the retro Jordans, and then uh, the Nike Air Maxes. And
Oh, okay.
I think like the new technology, like the KDs, which I can technology.
Hmm.
So a lot of the new technology shoes are really, really good, man.
Hmm.
Like the Air Maxes, like they do a really good job of support and stuff like that. And then I get the Jordans for nostalgia.
Yeah, of course.
I get the Jordans for nostalgia. Yo, if you hold on a second, I got something to show you.
Okay, go
I
for it.
got I
Yeah.
got so I have an NBA Connect. I got to show you.
Okay, let's see it.
Wait, all right, hold on. So let me put this on. Let me check I just check my battery. Oh, I'm good. Okay, so I can't give away the plug. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, I can hear
I can't give away the plug, man. But
you.
it's yeah, I got lucky, man. So shout out to the plug in Cleveland, Ohio. But all right, this is the box.
Uh-huh. Okay. Air Jordan
Jordan
11
11.
red. Ooh, okay.
Okay. Oh, dude, this box opens, man. So it is crazy, bro. It's like a work of art, man. This thing opens like it's like a
Oh,
little
yeah, yeah.
right.
At
I
an
took the
angle.
shoes out, but I don't want anyone to think these are fake. The original, whatever, man. I saw all the videos, the original crumply paper,
Yeah.
whatever. All right.
Ooh, those are a thing of beauty, yo. Wow.
Unreleased, yo.
Wow.
Unreleased. So,
Exclusive
dude,
right
I
there, huh?
love these, bro. That's why, man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
dude. So, I picked these up a few weeks ago, and so these are gonna be like this is Jordan on the side. Special
Mm-hmm.
release, December 11th. The metal, you got the little metal,
Uh-huh.
Jumpman. You should do the little, what is it called? Like the little tag on the video. This should be the tag on the video. It should be like, my Harvard right here, bro. Yo, my
Harvard.
Harvard diploma, the last shot, and holding my shoe. Just be like
Yo,
this,
okay.
bro. You should be like this, like, yo,
This is life, yeah.
this is life right here, man. This is.
Uh-huh.
And then one of my other favorite shoes of all time. I had these in the sixth grade. Had to pick them up again.
Ooh, I love those. Yeah, I love the way they just said air.
Right here, bro.
Yeah.
Very unique shoe.
Mm-hmm.
Very unique shoe. Very ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm.
Very comfortable. They did, fantastic shoes. Scottie Pippen. I love Pippen, man.
Mm-hmm.
His contributions, and it's just a great era. And what's funny, man. And is it a coincidence or not? Maybe this should be the little tag right here. Is it a coincidence? Right? What year did this shoe come out?
94? No,
Nah,
90.
nah.
What year?
This is 96.
Okay.
What year did this
96, right?
96? Is that crazy?
Yeah.
96, bro. It's for me, it's like, I think that's probably like why we like the shoes, because they remind us of us growing up, and
Mm-hmm.
but it's crazy. I wear these in the hospital, and it's almost like a language of minorities.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. Like, like I can have a conversation about shoes like the janitor, bro, or
Yeah.
or another doctor who's wearing shoes, and it's just almost like this unspoken like just relationship that we all have. We're like, no, we get in debates. No, the Jordan 10s, I'll never wear the Jordan 10s. The 11s are and so we just go in and in and in, and
Right.
that's the beauty of sneaker culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so unique and it's authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And you could just talk about it forever, man. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that. So
Yeah. No, that's cool. Thank you for showing that.
Mhm.
Now, going back to the medical side of things,
Good.
obviously it's hard to talk about this year without mentioning COVID and everything. But I wanted to ask you too, because it's labeled COVID-19 because it actually first started in 2019 in China. But when did you first hear about it at your work and realize that it could be a problem?
It's a deep question.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing with so first of all, I want to say I'm lucky that I had a really fantastic education, and the people that trained me, places like Harvard and stuff, they taught me how to critically, and I think that's the value of your education is you learn how to think independently and critically.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want others to synthesize information for me. I need to synthesize information. And so it was 2019 December, and you started to hear about this pneumonia from Wuhan. And I think the first, some of my friends that were actually other Latino doctors that are
Mm-hmm.
at this hospital, they were starting to post stuff on Facebook like, "Yo, this is pneumonia coming from Wuhan." I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, okay." Start picking up a little bit, and then you start to hear about these. They started to put up these. They started to build this hospital overnight, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember that in Wuhan, and this was like January, and then. Um, I think it was Hong Kong because Hong Kong's like this own territory. I think Hong Kong
Right.
was basically like scanning everyone coming in from mainland China for like or Taiwan. I can't remember, man. And I have to reread that, but they were scanning everyone for a fever. This is real, man. Like they're out there scanning people for fevers, this and that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like January, February, and then in March, you had this very influential doctor. His name is Dr. Atul Gawande.
Mm-hmm.
So Atul Gawande is a surgeon at Harvard, actually,
Yeah.
and he's a brilliant writer, thinker, and he's actually on the Biden Harris COVID response
Mm.
team. He's up there, man. I mean, this dude is like, respect to him. He could be the next Surgeon General. This guy's a very, 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 very smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a thinker. He writes these fantastic articles, and he could see things.
Yeah.
And he put it together. He was reading some papers, and he's like, you know what, like probably spreads by asymptomatic transmission, like meaning like you could have the virus and you may not be sick if you're
Right.
young, and because there's some data from South Korea at the time that showed that young people were testing positive but weren't showing symptoms, which
Mm-hmm.
brings up the question if you're an asymptomatic carrier, right? That's one of the conclusions that you draw from that. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's scary, right? Because that means you could be walking around carrying it and you don't even know.
Right.
And those older people getting sick, or presumably, or the majority of older people. And he was a big. I mean, this was like it made the waves, and this is like in early March, and this is the power of medicine. His hospital, Brigham and Women's, where I did my training,
Mm-hmm.
it's so like it's one of the Harvard teaching hospitals. They listened to his article, man, and like a week later, like everyone's gonna wear a mask. Everyone.
Mm.
So to my knowledge, they were the first ones to wear a mask, like universal mask wearing. And then it was like all over the news, and I shared it on Twitter. And then I think it was UCSF was there also. Like a lot of academic institutions were leading the way. And so that's the thing about science, Noah, is that you have to be willing to let go of preconceived notions and think critically on your own. And I think Dr. Tugawande was able to do that quickly for the benefit of a greater society.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, okay, no, this probably has an asymptomatic spread. He did this, boom, and they instituted universal mask wearing policy.
Mm-hmm.
And his article was about how healthcare workers in Asia weren't getting sick, and they weren't getting sick because they were wearing full, um, they were protecting themselves with like masks. So I think it was like early March that was really, you started to see the evidence in the literature and the evidence from Atul Gawande.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, I think we should all be wearing a mask. And then we had Ohio was ahead of the curve with closing things down, and right now we're in a second surge, but or third, but I think that those articles are going to go down in history. Like,
Yeah.
you should look it up. It's Dr. Atul Gawande. It was
Okay.
February or March of
Mm-hmm.
2020, early this year, and it was like how Hong Kong keeps the U.S. or how Hong Kong keeps their workers from getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really, really important. Um, and a lot of high level thinking, that he did. And now, history absolved him, right? So history proved him right because now he's on the Biden Harris team. And
Yeah.
guess what? It's all the people who are saying this, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
beautiful because these are the people that you want in charge.
Right.
I want the people. That's the thing about science is sometimes in science you say something that's truth, based on what's or observable facts or whatnot.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's so radical that people ridicule you for it.
Right. Right. That's how it
And it's
always
like
is.
anything in life, right? It's like anything in life. I'm sure when these shoes came out, back in '96 or whatever, or the original ones, I'm sure people ridicule it. It was so radical and so new. But it's like anything in life. People don't want
Yeah.
to accept things that are new,
Right.
and history absolved him.
Yeah.
Like, look now. Now he's like, no, he's going to be writing the rules
Yeah.
for the Harris administration. But it shows you the power of academic institutions. Like, this is why Harvard has a name Harvard. It's not because of it's filled with people. It's because the people are willing to take a chance
Hmm.
and say something valuable,
Hmm.
and something that's ahead of its time. And they're not scared to say something based on evidence. And I think that's the power of academic institutions.
Yeah.
It's why it's where that authenticity comes from.
Hmm.
And this isn't me saying this. Like, this is history. Like, look at who the first authors were who were saying this. Like, it's
Yeah.
there. It's in history. It's in our history books. Um, and then if you look at like the Biden Harris the COVID response team, they're
Hmm.
experts. It's all like Ivy League schools, man. But there's again, and minorities too on there. There's a lot of I think
Yeah.
the associate chief of the COVID response team is she's a black doctor from Yale. I think she's the associate dean of diversity
Hmm.
from Yale. I mean, it's powerful, right? So I mean, it's not the name of these places. It's that the people are
Mm.
it means a lot that the COVID 19 response team from the Biden administration has people that are experts in addressing systemic racism
Hmm.
because they understand. They're thinking ahead.
Right.
They're not waiting for public opinion.
Yeah.
They're thinking, and that's how we should be in science.
Hmm.
I was just watching. I love this. I love science, and and like age shouldn't. We shouldn't discriminate with age with science. And so, like, I had my 9-year-old was 9 and 7, and we're watching Nova, PBS documentaries, and we're learning about physics and the multiverse.
Hmm.
And dude, like my 9-year-old's like, the multiverse, like, how can parallel universes, and we're talking about string theory and multiple dimensions,
Oh,
and
okay.
it was deep, man. And this kid, the child's mind. But bro, this go back to the beginning of the conversation, Noah. This is who we are. Our
Yeah.
ancestors are leaders, man.
Right.
While Europe was in the dark ages, we were running the world with
Hmm.
our astronomy and our thinking.
Right.
So why am I going to hold my child back from listening to this? So we're listening to it. It's crazy. What's
Dang.
crazy is we're listening to this, right? And I post something on Twitter and do this influential physicist. I mean, I'm talking about like someone who's a leader in the field. He follows me, and I'm
Hmm.
like, yo, this is crazy. Like, this dude is like one of the leaders of like string theory.
Oh, okay.
And I reach
Dang.
out, I reach out to him. He reaches out to me, confidentiality. I'm like, name, but like, I'm like, yo, my 9-year-old likes this, and he's like, dude, that's crazy. You share cell phone numbers, this and that, and I'm like,
Oh,
but that's the power. That's the
right.
power of not waiting. I don't care what society says 9-year-olds should teach their kids. I
Yeah.
don't care. I don't care because you know what, the system is set up for whatever set of rules that's set for the general public. I don't
Yeah.
care. I'm gonna teach my kid about we're gonna watch documentaries on PBS. My kids watch The Last Dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know that's what I'm gonna teach my kids about. Like today we're driving around the city and running some errands and stuff. And we're listening to Hans Zimmer. He's a music producer. We're listening to the soundtrack of Gladiator.
Hmm.
And my kids are like, "Oh, Gladiator!" We're learning about the Roman Empire and Julius Caesar, why he was assassinated, and we're learning about like, it's deep, man. And it's like, knowledge should not have any
Right.
barriers, and like that's the hope that I have.
Yeah.
Noah's like when I don't know if you have kids, but when you have like that's the power of the brain. Like
Hmm.
what I used to do with my kid, and I hope other people take you know are inspired by this. Like I knew I had enough understanding of the brain that like there's a lot of neuroplasticity. Like neurons are growing very quickly in the first 2-3 years of life. So I
Yeah.
would get my kid these puzzles, and they were just like maps, and African continent, the Asian
Hmm.
continent puzzles, and I would just like I'm just gonna see what happens. So I would have my 2-year-old. She was 2 back then, man. And she would just do. She knew all the countries, man. Namibia, Egypt. But that's the power of the brain. Like
Hmm.
it has no limits. We're holding our kids back.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We're holding our
Yeah.
kids back. Like why can't a 9-year-old learn about the theory of multi dimensions?
Yeah. And that's funny because I had an interesting experience very similar to that this previous week with the kids I work with. I work with third and fourth graders, like I said, as a teacher's aide. But this one kid, he just really can't sit still. And I don't want to label him as a bad
That's
kid, but
that's
like,
because his brain was ahead. He's
yeah,
probably anxious. Like he's probably like, I gotta, he's bored, bro.
right. He's super bored. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I remember like one day he finished his work and he just wanted to get up and start talking to people. I was like, nah, like, hey, like, sorry, you got to sit down. Like, especially, he wanted to like talk to his friends. And it's like, sorry, with COVID, like, we can't be doing this right now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But then he like dropped this like knowledge bomb on me about like reptile. I don't know how the conversation came about. And I was like, oh, you like snakes, huh? And he's like, yeah, like I actually want to like grow up one day. And this is a fourth grader telling me all this. So I think it's the same age around as your daughter.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
he's like, yeah, I want to work like in a reptile house and like work with these kind of lizards and these kind of, and he just started like name dropping all these like different species of
mm-hmm,
reptiles. And I was
mm-hmm,
like literally like my perception of
mm-hmm,
him changed in like the matter of
mm-hmm,
seconds. And I was like, whoa, like this
mm-hmm,
kid, he's already, he's only fourth grade, but like he can, and that's where I've, because I do work in the school system and
mm-hmm,
I've had conversations with coworkers about
mm-hmm,
how by middle school, we can kind of almost very similarly to college, we can kind
mm-hmm,
of like, specializing certain kids, right? Still get them that
mm-hmm,
exposure to all subjects. We don't want to just limit them, but
mm-hmm,
usually by middle school, kids kind of have an idea of what they want to do.
mm-hmm,
And, you introduce them to more classes, they're going to be more entertained by it, right? And they're going to have a greater interest in school, but also like a greater knowledge of how to get into that career path. Because reptile, being a
yeah,
reptilian
mm-hmm,
person or whatever he wants to be
mm-hmm,
in that field is not like a normal thing. Him going
mm-hmm,
to regular public high school is not going to benefit him. And I feel almost
mm-hmm.
kind of bad.
You're talking about pipelining. So,
Yeah.
a person you have to have this person on your
Mhm.
podcast. And in fact, this is a contractual obligation.
Okay. All
I'm gonna do.
right.
His name is Raimundo Jaques. He's a
Okay.
lawyer who grew up with this kid with Raimundo Jaques, and he's like a brother to me, man. Raimundo, I'm gonna let him tell his story because it's very profound and very deep and very
Hmm.
impactful. And Raimundo basically, went to the same high school, went through a lot of similar struggles, and almost had his life taken. Some gang stuff. I should say just some environmental stuff. Long story short, becomes a lawyer,
Hmm.
and he has this youth pipeline program.
Ooh,
It's
okay.
called the Youth Law Academy, and what he does is very similar to what you're saying. He taps into the interests of, I believe it's middle school kids, and that's why I want him to talk on your show. And he basically harnesses that interest, and like it's like a mentoring program, and he
Hmm.
takes them through like middle school, high school, and basically gets them prepared to apply to law school.
Mm.
And that's exactly what you're getting at, and I envision like a youth medicine program.
Yeah.
That's what we need. We need a youth medicine program to really like get these kids on a pipeline.
Hmm.
And the thing is, no, like the only people that live through it, people like us, man, because we
Yeah.
lived through it. We know the power, man. Like
Right.
I can't go into another neighborhood that I wasn't raised in or has a different set of culture because I just don't understand that.
Right. Hell yeah.
And I could try, I have love for all humans. I could try, but it's different when it's from your own neighborhood, from your own
Hmm.
cultural sort of reality, because then you see yourself in these kids, you see yourself in these patients, you see yourself in the students, whatever. It's
Hmm.
powerful. And so
Yeah.
like Ray Hawkes works in Oakland, California. You
Okay.
got this kid, and it's powerful, man, because he inspires me.
Hmm.
And I see what he does, and it's like it's powerful. I know it's crazy. Is back in the grade, I'm like in the fifth grade, I was like, I knew Ray, and I'm like Ray. I'm like, how are you so smart, man? I want to be like. I'm serious because you could
Dang.
see it. You could see it. He's just
Hmm.
like different level, bro. And this nice, like just you could just see it. Like you could feel it. Like this kid's just gonna be like a freaking astronaut one day.
Yeah.
And you can see it, you can feel it, and energy. And I'm like, yo, I was like, Ray, how are you so smart? I wanted to be like him. This is my role model. And we grew up together, and circumstances happened, and like I said, he's gonna tell his story because it's very powerful and impactful.
Mm-hmm.
And this is someone that his story needs to be told, man. He needs to tell it, but it's crazy, it's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. So I think a pipeline program, like that works. But you're right, you got to tap into it early.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do it early. That's my kids. What I do.
Yeah.
We talk about Hans Zimmer, man. I taught her today about the Praetorian Guard. The elite
Oh.
guard that protect the Romans. I
Yeah.
taught the coup, of
Dang.
how Brutus took out his stepdad Julius Caesar, and she's like,
Mm-hmm.
"What?" She's like, "Dad, that's like if someone killed the president." And I'm like, "Exactly, the
Yeah.
concept of a coup. That's a
Mm-hmm.
coup d'état. And I'm like, it didn't go so well for the Romans. And she's like, "What?" Like all these things, bro. Like this is the knowledge
Mm-hmm.
that we need to impart on our kids. Like there's no limits. There shouldn't be limits. We
Right.
put our own limits. Like, oh, it's the third degree. We must not teach them about. I don't. Those rules aren't for me.
Right.
They're all for
Yeah.
us.
Mm-hmm.
Because back in the day, I'm sure like our ancestors were teaching little kids. They're looking up at the stars. They were teaching kids about cosmology.
Mm-hmm.
You think they were like, you're too young to learn about that?
No,
No,
hell no.
they knew. They're like, this
Yeah.
kid's interested in science. So like, this is gonna, he's gonna be our astronomer. Boom, pick
Mm-hmm.
him up. Yeah, let's do this, man. And so that's the beauty. It's like it's almost like we're redefining our culture ourselves.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. It's like, so I want my child to, what she told me today is profound. She's like, what if I can help? What if I can help? With the multiverse in physics?
Mm.
And I'm like,
Oh.
that was just hit like right here, and I was like, oh. What's beautiful, Noah, is that because we, in education, we have access to talent. Because think about it, like, remind me where you went to school.
Sacramento State.
Because you went to Sac State. I mean, you can walk down the hallway to the physics department and knock on the door of a physics professor,
Mm-hmm.
open the door, and you'll be like, hey, I'm Noah. This is who I am, and I'm sure that professor will listen to you
Mm-hmm.
and will have the time, and that's the beauty, is that we can do that
Mm-hmm.
because we have access to higher education. We have
Right.
access to resources. So like I could take my child who is interested in the subject to like a physicist and be like that physicist who reached out, be like, hey, let's talk. And then the power of that on the little kid's mind is to me, that's found that goes beyond, like, beyond anything like you
Yeah.
can measure, man. It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. I think we definitely underestimate kids, and I've learned that working with kids, we can't underestimate them. And we gotta be real with them. And I know, like, I only know so much about the things that I'm interested in, but definitely when I was more part of the after school program and doing stuff like that, I remember kids would ask me questions, or I would just teach them things outside of like the norm from what they were learning, and you could tell like the kids would garner or gain a new level of respect for you, like if you kept it
Mhm,
real with them, for lack of a better
mhm,
word. If you just keep it
mhm.
real with them, the kids will, because I think a lot of times at work too, we like shy away, or like, oh, let's not talk about this, or oh, let's not talk about that, because oh, it's a work setting. And it's like, I get it for a lot of things, but some things it's like, okay, then if you keep sheltering them from it, they're not going to respect us, because then like, well, these adult staff won't even respect us to have a conversation with us, especially middle schoolers. Like
Mhm.
I know they still have a lot of maturing to do as far as mentally and physically, but they can have some pretty like intellectual conversations with you, no doubt. Like, don't underestimate these kids.
Well, I mean, it's simple things, right?
Mhm.
I think it was Christopher Columbus or Hernando Cortez. I can't remember which one of which settler. I don't even want to call him a settler, but which
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
But like, okay, if they're learning about that, which by the way is really one-sided history, right?
Hmm.
Right. But if they're
Very.
learning about that, why can't they read their journals?
Hmm.
Let's read what Christopher Columbus wrote about,
Hmm.
raping women.
Hmm.
Like, was it Columbus? Or I think it was. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
I think it was Columbus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's read it. Hey, you're teaching them history, so why can't they read unfiltered what they wrote? Let's
Hmm.
see what they did to their ancestors.
Yeah.
That's power.
Right.
That's power.
Oh,
Want
hell
to teach
yeah.
that, right? No, that's selective history. They don't want to teach that. They don't want to teach
Yeah.
how they were raping women, and it's crazy, man.
Hmm.
The murders, and how they were purposefully infecting people, and just evil stuff, man.
Very.
Colonialism, evil, man. I mean, just things you can't even imagine, doing
Mm-hmm.
to another human being. But that's the power of history. The
Mm-hmm.
power of history is that when you teach it the right way, it could change minds.
Mm-hmm.
Like let's start in medicine, for example. They didn't teach us the history of medicine in medical school. It sounds weird, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Right.
right? Doesn't it sound weird? Like I didn't learn the history of medicine. Like, hello, I learned it on my own. And
Right.
check this out. And this is why. So the first hospital in the United States was Pennsylvania Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
The idea for that hospital didn't come from the U.S. It came
Mm-hmm.
from a charitable hospital in Florida by one of my articles. So
Mm.
it was basically the concept of the hospital came from a charity envisioned building from the Catholic Church, and it was a resistance against the French monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, so much so that the kings wanted to do away with the hospital system because it was like it was basically like this radical, like all humans should have access to some kind of health care.
Right.
It's a revolutionary act. And it was actually Benjamin Franklin's friends who went to
Mm.
they were all, dude, all the people who basically founded this country, they borrowed their ideas from the
Yeah.
Enlightenment.
Right.
It all came from Europe, from France.
Mm-hmm.
So they saw this guy, his name was Thomas Bond. He was a medical student. And he's out there. Picture yourself, right? He's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like looking at this hospital, and he's like, "Yo, what is this? This is crazy." Medical student, and here's this hospital system that's like a charity, like this hospital. I've never seen this before. So he came back to the U.S. It wasn't even the U.S. then. He came back to the colonies, and he
Right.
told Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin's his friend. And Franklin is like, that's a good idea.
Dang.
So Franklin gets the money together, and he lobbies, and they build the first hospital, which becomes not the first medical school.
Mm.
So Noah, the first hospital in the United States was built to provide free care for poor.
Oh wow.
And the whole idea, if you look at the journals, the whole idea, like they talk about it, they were like, we were bringing in Native Americans, we were bringing in people that had communicable diseases, right? And we were treating them. So the very first hospital in the U.S. provided free healthcare, and it was,
Wow.
and that's power. That's
Yeah. Hell
power.
yeah.
That's DNA, bro. So think about
Mm-hmm.
this. We hold the U.S. Constitution to high respect, right? Like we look at the Constitution, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
the right to bear arms, the Second Amendment, all this stuff. How about our first hospital?
Mm.
That's as deep as our Constitution. Why
Yeah.
aren't we
Hell yeah.
holding it to that? You know what?
Right.
Because they don't teach you that. They don't want you to know that.
Yeah.
Because that takes
That's
away
selective
from the
history.
capital, selective
Yeah.
history. That takes away from the capital because now suddenly you're talking about democratization. You're talking
Mm-hmm.
about sharing resources with, and that's power, man. That's power because now all of a sudden, think about it. Now all of a sudden you have a responsibility to immigrant communities, the farmers in California. Hey, Benjamin Franklin was funding the treatment of poor people in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. He didn't ask for citizenship. He didn't ask for this. So
Mm-hmm.
why are we going to ask
True. Right.
the immigrants for their papers?
Mm-hmm.
It's everyone, right?
Yeah.
It's power. It's power. So I think like we have to do, and this is part of our mission here, right? Is to spread this. We got to talk about this. We got to talk about. There's a link, or there's on my Medium account. It's to the Benjamin Franklin article. It's in the bottom, but there's a link to that, and it's power. We need to learn about this, man. We need to
Yeah.
learn about the power of history,
Mm-hmm.
the power of man. This really can change a lot of perspectives. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, then sticking with the medical field, kind of as we wrap things up,
Yeah.
how do you see COVID-19 kind of affecting the medical field and hospitals in preparation for in the future down the road?
I see it preparing. Well, I think that. I think we don't know the total impact, but this is a once in a lifetime pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is like the early 19 hundreds, Spanish influenza, which
Yeah.
even the term has its own, it was actually from Kansas.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It's great, right? History, right? We're talking about
Yeah.
history, selective history. So let's call it the Kansas flu. So this is a once in a lifetime thing. So I think hopefully once the vaccine's out, the results are promising, things will go back to normal. And I think that what this pandemic has exposed is um, the burden of disease and inability of access or lack of access to healthcare in our disenfranchised communities, which are
Yeah.
unfortunately Black and Latino.
Right.
So I think that pandemic has showed us the inequalities. Once again, the inequalities. It sort of put everything on blast. It put everything on a projector screen
Hmm.
because we've known about this inequality in education, in business. Like how many Black and Latino people own stocks?
Right.
Dude, I mean, for real, something simple like that. And it's like, how many Black and Latino people are CEOs?
Hmm.
I'm not. Look, I have no. I'm not saying one thing or another. These are facts.
Hmm.
Like just look at the numbers.
Yeah.
How many Black and Latino people are Black and Latino people of departments?
Yeah.
I'm not. Again, I'm not putting in any emotion. This is the truth.
Right.
We know this is a problem
Hmm.
because because in the literature, it's just there. And so I think the COVID has shown us the burden of these and what our people suffer through in our disenfranchised communities.
Hmm.
The CDC report, so specialty is like obstetric anesthesia. So I follow very closely a lot of literature around the pregnancy and pregnancy-related
Hmm.
diseases, and the CDC data came out for COVID and pregnancy.
Hmm.
And here's the wild part, man. I mean, the numbers are insane. 68% of the COVID and pregnancy infections were in Black and Latino
Ooh.
patients.
Wow.
68%.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I'm going to move here because my computer is but it's okay. Can you hear
That's
me?
okay. Yeah, I can hear
No,
you.
no. Yeah, I'm just gonna 68%, man. What does that tell you?
Like what we were talking about earlier, it's just it's
68%, man.
there's
It's
just
a
a huge there's obstacles that we're born into, and those communities and members of those communities are born
Here we go.
into.
Black women are 3 times more likely to die in pregnancy compared to their white counterparts.
That's crazy.
3 times more likely.
Hmm.
Spanish-speaking women, Latina women, are less likely to receive an epidural. Now, this is real, man.
Yeah.
This is
Got.
real. These are numbers, and you know what? Don't take my word for it. Look at the COVID. Like again, look at the Biden-Harris COVID response team. Like
Yeah.
they're addressing this. They're saying this is a problem.
Hmm.
So they're addressing it, and they're actually showing us an answer. So that's why I have faith because you have people like Kamala Harris that are making the right choices, like
Hmm.
Joe Biden, like they're putting the right people in charge. They're saying, no, we have to put our experts in charge. We have to put
Right.
our people that understand the burden of these diseases in our communities in charge. And that's the beautiful part is there's hope for the future.
Yeah.
There's hope for that, and so it's there. Like we'll see what happens, but like when we have a Latino president, hopefully a Chicano president, like they're gonna shed light on the issues in our communities, on what we're talking about,
Yeah.
education, health, business.
Hmm.
This is important stuff, man.
Yeah.
But that's how I think COVID, because the vaccine's gonna come and things will get back to normal, hopefully. But these issues of inequality are still gonna exist.
Yeah, of course. Right.
Just like they exist in pregnancy, just like they exist in access to healthcare and stuff like that. So,
Hmm.
but it's a very good question, man. It's a very good question.
Hmm. So as we wrap things up, what are some other goals that you have, not only for the rest of this year, but just to kind of kick it off next year too?
Man, it's a deep question. Goals, man. Goals, goals, goals. Number one, first and foremost, be a good dad. I
Hmm.
need to be a good role model for my women, my women. Actually, they are women, my girls. Two Latina girls that I'm raising for my wife. I need For me, I want my daughters to believe they can achieve anything is possible. They want to be an astrophysicist, to be it. Let's do it. They want to write music. I want them to write music. I think my goals now, like that's my personal goal in my life. Be there for my family, for my dad. My mom passed away, rest in peace. But like, be there for my dad and my siblings. That's number one.
Hmm.
Be a good husband and father. And then of course, career coming second. I would even say health. Like I have a lot of, I've, bro, this is one thing, man. We got to talk about too with our community is like
Yeah.
staying healthy.
Yeah.
For me, like I 4 a.m. go to the gym. I
Nice.
just do it, bro, before work, get it in, and that's really transformed. I believe I'm healthier, I'm sharper in my mind because of that.
Hmm.
Learning how to eat the right foods, learning the
Yes.
power of eating, plant based, of a little bit of meat's okay, but like eating like fresh, fruit. So like health, I would say is number two. Personal health, mental health,
Hmm.
and then now go to career. Um, I think a goal for me is just I think that's a good question because I think the goal has changed in the last month. I think this tweet that I put out really shed light on the power of sharing information. Like I've had a lot of people reach out for me from around the country. I had the NPR interview that's going to come out in a
Hmm.
few weeks, and God knows what that's going to bring. Like what's this NPR going to bring? What's this interview going to bring?
Right.
What are these interactions going to bring? And if that's my purpose in life,
Hmm.
finding purpose, right? So like I think if my purpose is to enlighten um, minorities or people that don't have access to higher education, if that's my purpose to motivate people, then so be it. That's my purpose.
Right.
And naturally, my heart's gonna feel that's if that's the right thing for me to do.
Hmm.
Obviously, I love medicine. I love the practice of it. I think it's great. It's challenging. It's complex. Everything, but I need to be drawn to where my purpose is. And
Yeah.
if I can help more people by talking about these issues, then I want to do that.
Yeah.
Then you know what I mean? So it's almost like our be flexible, it's
Yeah, of
beauty.
course.
It's beauty. It's beauty in life, man. It's
Yeah.
beauty. It really is because like, and here's the crazy thing, man. It took a lot of courage for me to send that tweet.
Hmm.
I didn't really, yes, any one of my classmates at medical school or, um, actually just one of my classmates knew about this,
Hmm.
what I went through, but like my colleagues didn't see and whatever, my colleagues now at work, I never talked about that. I
Yeah.
never because I didn't want to make it feel like I was like I want
Yeah.
sympathy.
Of course. Right.
I
You're trying to shield there.
internalized. I internalized it until finally I was like, I think it just felt right. The timing was right. Should I do it? I'll send it. And
Hmm.
so I just sent it, and it's crazy, man.
Yeah.
It just blew up, and it led to a lot of really beautiful things like this.
Go ahead and continue what you were saying. I believe with just finding your calling as far as passing that knowledge on to the next generation of people.
Yeah, just trying to inspire kids, man. I
Hmm.
think we really have a lot of unique things to contribute to the next generation, and I really see a lot of hope in that. So talking about like the Biden Harris transition team and like how they're showing us a way for the future, and sort of like just writing our own rules, if you will.
Hmm.
Let's write rules for our communities. Let's talk about the things that are important for us. You know what I mean?
Hmm. And I think that's is something that I can relate to as well, just because sometimes it does get overwhelming. There's definitely days at work where I'm working in a pretty low socioeconomic area, and I'm just I feel like it's almost a hopeless situation. But then I remember there's other people in the community trying to push positivity or push a good message or trying to share that knowledge, and it's about kind of creating that network. And I think that's what's kind of inspired me to take this podcast to a different level, connecting different people, getting different ideas, because I think one person said it best, like, not one person can't do everything, but everybody can do one thing. And if everybody does one thing, that can ultimately change generations of
Mhm.
people from communities like ours. And so I just think that's like it's a powerful thing once you kind of realize that, and you meet other people. I think sometimes you get scared too, that like, oh, I might be the only one who thinks like this. But
Mhm.
the more I've put this kind of energy out into my life and with my
Mhm.
circle, with my friends, I've been constantly connected with new people who think similarly. And I just think that's like that's the wonderfulness of all this, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I've found that being like believing in yourself, and as cheesy as that sounds, believing in yourself and having following your intuition usually yields really good results
Hmm.
if you're honest to yourself. If you're honest to yourself, and if you really, if you're doing things for a genuine reason. Like one of the best expressions um, that I've ever heard from a mentor, actually from Dr. Santalina Marrero, is if you do what you love, the money will follow.
Hmm.
And that's so true. What's crazy, Noah, is that flies against the dominant culture. So the dominant culture is money. It's making money, right? Everything. I mean, it's right. We're the beacon of capital in the world.
Hmm.
It's not a surprise. It's not controversial to say that. I mean,
Right.
that's right.
Yeah.
And so everything is seen through that lens of money, money, money. And it's like sometimes you have to fight and adjust that culture,
Hmm.
you know? Um, and it's hard. It's hard, man, because there's a lot of obstacles, there's a lot of pressures that you're dealing with,
Right.
and it's not easy, man. It's not easy, like you see a lot of things like go through, and you're like, a lot of like people that you consider your brothers, and
Hmm.
people close to you, and it's tough, man. So I think that it's a constant fight, that you have to keep the pressure up for enlightenment, because otherwise it's easy for it to be taken away,
Yeah.
you know.
And and just sticking with like the capitalism thing and money, I just think, and relating it back to COVID, I remember the craziest thing when the market, it didn't crash completely, but a lot of
Hmm.
stocks dipped, and I dabble in a little bit of stocks, but just minor
Hmm.
stuff because I don't have a whole lot of savings, so
Hmm.
I'm just trying to start out with some small
Hmm.
stuff. But I remember reading an article like a month after the original shutdown of March 13th, like the top 1% of the United States, like the billionaires, their net
Hmm.
worth was before COVID, I think their net worth was something like,
Hmm.
96 billion together or whatever.
Hmm.
And, in that first month, because of COVID and all these stock prices dropped tremendously, but
hmm
so they bought them for cheap, et cetera, or whatever. They invested in, they made smart investments, but they're also like billionaires. So they're allowed to, they have more flexibility to, but that value like almost like tripled. They went from like 96 billion to 220 something as a group,
hmm
right? And I was just like, oh my
hmm
goodness, like
hmm
that's crazy, and we still have people out here like losing their homes,
hmm
and it just, that's what capitalism breeds, though. It's just like
hmm
the fact that we have billionaires is kind of like, it's a shocking concept, right? I think even billionaires, I don't think we understand like how much more a billion is than a million.
Man, you're touching into something deep here.
Hmm.
So I wrote an article, and this is why writing is so therapeutic. And I
Hmm.
and I want everyone listening is learn how to write. Just write, because the writing brings out innovative ideas, things that you never really conceptualize. Because sometimes your brain is thinking something, your mind is thinking, you just don't know. It's too abstract in your thought process. But when you write it, it helps you put it into these ideas together that
Hmm.
make sense. It's almost like, geeking out here, but it's almost like a different dimension. The mind is a different dimension. It's like you're going from 3D, you're writing the code, like the DNA code of your
Yeah.
thoughts. It's beautiful, man. It's like you put out your thoughts. And I wrote this article about like basically like the problem with US capitalism, and what you're getting at, man, is so true. Like capitalism is just, first of all, and we're going back to a theme, history.
Hmm.
Like it's just it if you look back in history, it's just like the wealth of the US has just been concentrated for certain groups, generation past generation past generation.
Right.
And we're the radical ones that are just breaking in, being first generation. That's crazy.
Hmm.
And just like in Mexico, you have old school families from the Spanish Empire that were there, and
Hmm.
they're concentrated their wealth in gold, and that gets passed along.
Hmm.
Um, but let's take, for example, the concept of a company, right? And this is really where I think there's a lot of opportunities for education that we can provide your listeners, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So a company has its brains, and the brains is what the executive suite, right? That's the company. So let's say you have a company, you making sneakers. So you have your product that's a sneakers, and then you have your corporate suite, your executive suite. That's what your CFO, your CEO, right?
Right.
That executive structure has a code of ethics,
Mm-hmm.
and that's called a corporate structure. So you have your corporate structure that defines your company. This is very standard. Like American business has this very classic corporate structure,
Yeah.
and the dominant theory in the whatever, let's say, the dominant theory has been maximizing profits. So it's called shareholder, basically, dominant.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had a company about making sneakers, my whole point and perspective is to maximize profits. But the problem is that the incentive then becomes to make profits and not to make quality sneakers,
Yes.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
or to make money and not take care of your patients, or to
Mm-hmm.
make money and not focus on the, so what they've done in Europe, and this is what we need to spread. This is the what they've done in Europe is, they've challenged us. So Germany is one of the leading countries right now, man. I mean, let's be honest. Like, Angela Merkel is like the leader of the free world. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, Germany's, man. So in Germany, what they do, they have changed the corporate structure. They have changed the DNA of the corporate structure, where they say, okay, look, it's not going to be a focus on profits. So what they've done is they've gone from a shareholder dominant uh, structure where they just focus on profit to
Okay.
a stakeholder. So what that means is the following. This is revolutionary. So think about it. You have a sneaker company.
Mm-hmm.
They cap at their corporate structure. Let's say there's 10 spots. They cap 5 of those spots for shareholders to, let's face the truth. You got to make money, so you have to put people that are good at making money and invest in the money. But guess what? The other 5 spots are for the workers,
Mm.
stakeholders, the workers. So now let's break it down to a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to hospital. Okay. So let's say you have a hospital and you have this corporate structure. Though let's say there's 10 spots.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't nurses be on there?
Oh, of course, right?
Shouldn't doctors be on there? But let's be a little more innovative. Shouldn't medical students be on there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that no. Now you're getting deep, man. Now you're talking about challenging status. This is power. And actually, there's a very good paper, man. You got to look into this, man. Maybe put the link too on this part. It's from the Roosevelt Institute. So the Roosevelt Institute is a think tank. They're a liberal think tank. Of course, they're after FDR. And
Mm-hmm.
FDR was a champion of liberal ideas, and he gave us the Social Security, things that we, or like, they just, is things that helped our parents,
Right.
and
Right.
so the Roosevelt Institute came out with this. They said we need to rebrand the corporate structure. In reality, looking back, what they actually did was they borrowed a lot of ideas from Germany. There are a lot of these ideas for corporate restructuring, stakeholder dominant. That's the reality. Is
Mm-hmm.
they're figuring this out. Hey, Germany did it, and guess what? In Germany, they still make money, but it's responsible. It's
Mm.
responsible. It's taking care of your employees. Taking care. You need. And so, like, for me, this type of thinking needs to take hold. It's like it's sparking you're sparking the fire. It's almost like
Mm.
once you get a few sparks going, it's going to take off like wildfire. So
Mm-hmm.
corporate restructuring needs to happen. And here's another one. No one talks about this, okay? But this is based on evidence. I'm going to consider you a millennial, right? Are you a millennial?
Yeah.
So I'm on the older side of the millennial because I was born in the 80s or whatever. So there's like, older, younger millennials. So, okay. So
Mm-hmm.
we're millennials. We are one of the hardest hit generations economically, with student debt, with housing, this and that, right?
Mm.
Everyone says that we're what? Everyone says that we're spoiled, this and that.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. My older, I make fun of my older, he's a Gen X. I'm like, yeah, all right, man. Like, you don't know, let's look at the debt. look at how fast the debt, for student loan debt has risen compared to, like what we have incurred our generation or previous ones. But our demographic has suffered disproportionately. You know,
Hmm.
in California, a big issue is like housing. Young people aren't buying homes. It's just hard. I
Right.
live in Ohio. Part of the reason I live in Ohio is because I can't. I grew up in Silicon Valley. You think I could just move back? Ain't gonna
No,
happen.
yeah.
So so when we're talking about corporate restructuring, is it not then an ethical obligation to include people from the demographic of millennials because
Mm.
they went through very unique because they have a very unique struggle? Isn't that
Of course,
isn't
yeah.
that isn't
Yeah.
that part of and this what they call it? It's been a while since I've written about this or read about it, but what they call this is um, they call it corporate restructuring, democratization. It's a democratization of the executive suite, um, but it's profound and it's the idea. It's all about the idea, man. There's a book. It's the book by Thomas Piketty. Thomas Piketty is a French economist, and of course, man, it's always the French, right? The French are leading revolutions. They overthrew the French monarchy. They gave us democracy. They gave us the hospitals,
Right, right.
and now they're giving us the future of capitalism. You know what I'm saying? Like they're giving us it's gonna happen, man. So like, I don't like to invoke a lot of politics into my talks and stuff, but 30 years ago, it was unheard of to have someone like AOC,
Mhm.
um, you know,
Oh
um,
yeah.
in politics, and now there's a reason because we, as a generation, we're like when we hear socialism. I don't think about Cuba and Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez. I don't think about that. You know what I think about socialism? I think about what we just talked about. That's socialism.
Yeah.
What we just talked about, corporate restructuring. That's socialism to me.
Right.
That's democratization. I'm sure when FDR did Social Security, they called him a socialist.
True. Yeah. Hell yeah.
Obama with the Affordable Care, they call him a socialist, this and that. Let's be real here. We're talking about democratization, like you said. We need to, that hyper concentration of wealth in the top 0.1% that needs to be broken up because it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy
Yeah.
to have. It leads to an imbalance.
Right.
It's crazy. Everyone it talks about. I love how we're coming back to history. We're just coming back to history again and again.
Always. Yeah. It's important.
Everyone talks about the golden era, right? In like Republicans love to talk about this. The golden era of the U.S. is when the golden 50s, right? They talk
Right.
about that. The
Yeah.
suburb, yeah, yeah. You know how high the taxes were back then?
How?
Oh, they were high, bro. This is the post FDR era.
Okay.
This is socialist America, post
Okay.
World War II. The,
Yeah.
the the height of Americana, the height of American influence of the height of capital
Mm-hmm.
in wealth. Amongst I'm talking about shared wealth, social mobility. The is post World War II. The GI Bill is an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah. Okay.
Taxes were a lot higher. The corporate taxes were higher, and we moved away with that. Reaganomics, man, brought that. Reaganomics really broke down
Mm.
that democratization of wealth, and it became hyperinflated, hyper
Mm-hmm.
concentrated in the elite, and that's a problem, man. And this isn't just me talking about it, man. This is out in the and it's almost like we got to go back. We got to go back to that. So when you hear people talk about the golden era and this and that, like, all right, let's
Mm-hmm.
go back. I want to go back to those taxes.
Yeah.
Why
Okay.
not? You know what? Like, it's just the truth, man. Like we have what I like about the concept of corporate restructuring, which is Germany. People are quick to, man. They want to label socialism and this and that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm talking about is what Germany's doing. So before people label this as socialist, this and that, it's like, yeah, you don't see a and think socialism, do you? You don't see a
Mm-hmm.
Mercedes and think that, do you? No. I'm talking about very well established theories that are in practice that work.
Mm-hmm.
These are and by the way, what Germany's doing, like, yeah, I would rather, look at their COVID response.
Yeah.
They're crushing it.
Way
These
better
are,
than ours.
yeah, there you go. So, I'm talking about very well accepted tenets of Western thinking.
Mm-hmm.
This is very well established, but again, we have to get these ideas of what it means to have corporate restructuring in the 21st century, what it means
Hmm.
to have an executive suite that is comprised of millennials,
Right.
that is comprised of stakeholders, workers, that's power right there, right? So what we're getting at is we're getting at shared governance. That's what it's called, shared governance,
Hmm.
a shared governance model where you have worker representation, and that's powerful, man.
Yeah.
That's powerful. The data supports it, man. The data's there. Like, if you're a hospital system, hospitals that are ran by doctors, guess what? They do better. They outperform hospitals that are ran by business people.
Right.
You think that's a does that make is
No,
that
it doesn't make
commercial?
sense.
No.
No.
It's like this. Like, here's a tangible one. Do you remember the company And One?
Yes, yeah, I remember Man One, of
So
course.
And One was wildly popular because they had their whole M1, the videos and this and that. And
Yeah.
I think M1 was just bought out, was like someone just bought it, who someone has zero connection to culture, someone who's not a stakeholder, someone who's not a sneaker, and the company went out.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I have to reread the history, but it's something like that. And it's like um, Nike, Tinker Hatfield. You have people that are artists, you have people that are in charge. Like Tinker Hatfield had it. He did his designs for Jordan, and he showed Jordan his shoe.
Hmm.
Because Jordan had to give the approval for the shoe.
Right.
So that's key, man. So I think that's a profound concept.
Yeah.
Shared governance, man. Democratization. It's democratization, man. It's not socialism, where it's democratization of the corporate structure system. And these are powerful ideas. One day, right? I hope we could come back to this video,
Hmm.
and we can say, oh wow, we were one of the first Latinos to talk
Hey.
about democratization, executive suite, and now it's something. It's become something that's accepted, dominant, an accepted theory in
Hmm.
practice in the U.S. But we have work to do.
Yeah. Well, speaking on that, because I've had similar conversations with friends about this and friends our age group, or millennials too. Do you think it's something that we can kind of like slowly ease our way into and just over time, like continuously push that message and more people who are opposed to it just kind of convert over? Or is this something that requires like almost like a for
Like a
lack of a
spark.
yeah, like a spark, or like almost for lack of a better word, like a revolution,
Mm,
whether it's
mm,
conflict or not,
mm-hmm.
just something like that. Because
The
I've had
revolution of ideas.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I think either or, right? So if history has taught us that revolutions happen with ideas, like the
Hmm.
Enlightenment was after the
Start,
Enlightenment
yeah.
was a revolution of ideas, and then the French had their violent things, but it was, the rest of Europe was going through an enlightenment of ideas. So I think, post pandemic, there can be an enlightenment of ideas. There should be enlightenment ideas because people have really had a lot of time to think.
Right.
So I think that it would probably come in the form of enlightenment of ideas. Like, I think a lot of things are going to be just written about, man. And I don't see why it has to be of conflict. I think we could talk about these things, and I think social media provides a unique avenue for the transformation of ideas. Um, I mean, an example is like the Arab Spring. So the Arab Spring was, they had the overthrow of a lot of like dictatorships, if you will, right? And I'm really paraphrasing here, but the purpose of me for stating that example of the Arab Spring is that social media was a huge player in that. Social media, like a lot of people would post on Twitter, Facebook. So look at what I did, right? So one tweet went viral, and that tweet was just about a high school near dropout who went to
Hmm.
medical school. Why can't a tweet about democratization of the executive suite go viral?
True. Yeah.
So imagine that, man. Imagine that going viral, or
Yeah.
you influence someone popular, someone like LeBron, someone
Yeah.
like and he tweets about that. Maybe he is doing that. We don't know. Maybe his foundation is a shared governance model. I don't know. Maybe Nike is. I don't know.
Hmm.
Like, maybe they are following the examples of the leading Western countries like Germany. I don't know. But I think that it would come in a way of ideas, and I think social media is gonna like, help play a part. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like, people will talk about it, and then it'll take off. And once you have enough people talking about it, then you really have the culture change.
Yeah.
But I think we need people that are influential. You know, the people that we look up. You know.